Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the March 17th, 2021 meeting of the Transit Commission. Tomorrow, March 18th, is the Transit Operator and Worker Appreciation Day, an annual day where we celebrate public transit employees and thank them for the incredible work that they do. As we all know, COVID-19 has impacted everyone's life in some way. It has been a year since the first state of emergency was declared in Ontario. Since that time, our transit operators and workers have continued to keep our transit system running safely. On the roads, on the rails, in the stations, and behind the scenes, OC Transpo employees have remained dedicated to getting you where you need to go throughout this pandemic. OC Transpo, Paratranspo, and O-Train operators are skilled professionals who operate transit vehicles in Ottawa's challenging weather conditions. Whether it's driving conventional buses, Paratranspo minibuses, or trains, these devoted operators come to work every day ready to serve our customers. There's also a large group of OC Transpo employees working extremely hard behind the scenes to deliver essential transit services all across our great city. Whether it's mechanics, garage attendants, trainers, transit planners, dispatchers, customer service agents, special constables, support staff, and the list goes on. It takes an integrated team of people to run a complex transit system like OC Transpo. Together, they keep our city moving, rain, shine, or snow, day and night. To all OC Transpo employees, I want to say thank you for this important work that you do every day. Your professionalism and dedication are what keeps OC Transpo running so well, and Ottawa could not function without you. This year, more than ever, let's show our appreciation let's show OC Transpo employees how much we appreciate them. Here's what we can do. Tomorrow, March 18th, show your gratitude on social media by sharing a special thank you post and using the hashtag #ThanksTransit, and that's a capital S on thanks. Transit operators and workers deserve our appreciation today and every day. Thank you. Okay, turning back to the agenda for today, I've received regrets from Commissioner Williams, who will be unable to attend today. Could the Commission Coordinator please call the roll call?
Commissioner Brockington.
Good morning.
Commissioner Caricato.
Hello, I'm here.
Commissioner Gower.
Here.
Commissioner Kavanagh.
Here.
Commissioner McKenney.
Present.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Suds.
Here.
Commissioner Tierney.
Present.
Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Wright Gilbert.
Good morning.
Vice Chair Cloutier.
Yes, sir.
Chair Hubley.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much, Eric. Now, before we move on, are there any declarations of interest? No? Okay, thank you. Can we confirm the minutes, please? The Transit Commission meeting of Wednesday, February 17, 2021. Are those minutes carried?
Carried.
Thank you. Okay, our first item up is the presentation on Confederation Line and bus service update. We'll hold that. The second item is the Light Rail Regulatory Monitor and Compliance Officer Annual Report. I see Mr. Barada is with us today. We'll hold that item. He has a presentation and he will be answering any questions on his report. And let's see, number 3 is the Transit Services 2021 Business Plan and Reporting. There's no presentation, but we have a speaker for that, so we're going to hold that one as well. And number 4 is advertising on the O-Train Line 1. There's no presentation or delegations for this, but we do have Will McDonald, the Chief Procurement Officer, is in attendance to answer any questions. Does anybody want to hold that item, or can we carry it?
Hold, I guess.
Hold, okay. Okay, so that was the last item, so we're holding all the items. All right, so we'll go back to the first item, Mr. Manconi. If you're ready, if you have your slides ready to go, we can start.
Yes, Chair, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Charter and Mr. Scrimgeour for the update. Just a few words before we kick it off. I too want to say thank you to the thousands of men and women that show up every single day to keep our city moving. They've done a phenomenal job. And with COVID being very difficult year for everybody, it's even more important to show our appreciation of them today and every day. So thank you, Chair, for your kind words and members of Commission. Just a couple of other housekeeping items. I know that there's a lot going on, as you're seeing in our business plans and so far our heavy agendas. Just a couple of touch points. I want to acknowledge we have had our first Fair Working Group meeting. So that one is off and running. We also had a number of para transit meetings. And I say that because I know one of our customers reached out to both Mr. Scrimgeour and I last night saying, you know, where's para in your work plan, and we can certainly speak to that when we get to that item. It's para as a very, very important priority for us. And then lastly, I know Councillor Gower was asking about the follow-up on numerous commissioners wanted additional safety measures. We have met with those that wanted to talk to us, and we're going to memo Transit Commission back. So there's good progress on that, Councillor Gowers, and thank you to all the members that have given Pat the input. So we're going to get back to you in short order on that with some additional measures as requested. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Charter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manconi. You can pull up the slide deck, that'd be great. Great, thank you very much. I'll start with just a quick overview of the presentation, providing an update on performance of line 1, update on the rectification plan, including the system performance during weather events, brief update on the rail reliability, some of the additional continued monitoring, train wheels. We are running the 11 train service plan that we communicated at the last Transit Commission. And then at that point, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Pat Scrimgeour, who will talk about the transit recovery update and COVID-19. So next slide, please. So in terms of the overall performance for the month, you can see for the month of February, we ended up at 98% reliability for the month. So that notes our 6th consecutive month where we've achieved 98%. And so far for the month of March, we're seeing that same trend where we're right at that 98% now for the month of March as well. Next slide, please. Recall this slide shows the overall trend, and it plots the day-to-day service delivery. Again, we are still continuing to see the ongoing improvements in reliability, both on a monthly basis and in a daily basis. We are seeing less variability from day to day. We're not seeing the major dips that we saw if you look at January, February, March of the previous year, or even June, July, August of the summer. So those major issues are not reoccurring. We're seeing good reliability both on a monthly basis and a day-to-day basis. I think that's it for this slide. I'll go to the next one, because my last point there is, if you recall that this slide once again pulls together the two slides together, and we want to see we want to see it to be a green bar. We want to see it to be above that 97% threshold, which is the dotted line across the top. So again, we're seeing good reliability, less variability day to day. There has been a little bit more variability over the last couple months, but that's consistent with the winter operations. It is the most challenging month. You're faced with the challenging months, and you're faced with different types of weather events. So a little bit of variability there, but still very, very high. And we're ending up on the monthly basis, we're at 98%, and the majority of the days we're 97, 98% and above. So good performance in that regard. Next slide, please. Very quickly, with regards to the rectification plan, communicated at the last Transit Commission that those first 5 items are considered complete. Switch heaters, overhead catenary system, traction power, passenger doors, and HVAC. The 2 outstanding items remain the vehicle auxiliary power, and as well as the fine tuning of the vehicle braking systems. With the 11 train operation that we're doing right now, we're able to do some additional software testing and validation that's going on. So that's the majority of the work that's remaining with those 2 items is software. And with anytime you're dealing with software, there has to be a lot of testing and validation before you put it into service. So we're going through those processes now. Slide, please. system performance during weather events. So these are all the weather events in which we saw accumulation of 3 centimeters or more. You know, and if you recall, the switch heaters were improved, enhanced, and completed on December 6th. So we saw good, solid performance throughout the entire winter. You can see here, you know, I showed the snowfall accumulation as well as the service delivery. So very, very positive results. And that's across the line, whether it be in the East End or West End. So very, very pleased with the results on the switch heaters and the work that was done in that regard. Slide, please. Last Transit Commission, we added some information with regards to some additional monitoring. So track work, we know that there is track work that's coming in the spring months. You know, and we're looking forward to that because that's going to start to enhance the ride quality for our customers. You know, it'll deal with some of the noise and vibration issues that our customers are currently experiencing when they're on the train. So looking forward to that. Obviously, the work can't be done during the winter months, but we are trying to advance some work now that will get us in a good position for when the spring is here, that we can hit that work and get it done as quickly as possible. The other piece that we mentioned last Transit Commission was train couplers. It was identified as a potential cause of some of the in-service failures. So they've identified some software that can be adjusted, as well as some mechanical modifications, mostly just it's wiring and making sure that the wires don't rub or chafe or anything like that. So that work is being completed over the next 2 months while we're in that 11 train operation. And then lastly, on train wheels, that work is still continuing. We're going to be able to leverage this 11 train schedule to accelerate the wheel replacement schedule. With that said, though, that the daily inspections will continue on the fleet until all the wheels are replaced and/or the set screws adjusted. We continue to work with the TSB and the RMCO, keep everyone engaged and informed as to the current status. And you know, with once again with that 11 train schedule that we're operating right now, RTG does have that second set of equipment here on site, and they're working through to get that up and going. They are running it right now. They just need to get to a point where, you know, as you do a few trains, you start to get quicker and quicker as the knowledge and experience is there. So we're going through that process right now. With that said, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Pat Scrimger, who'll provide an update on the transit recovery. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. So ridership, you'll remember that we finished the year last year in December, we finished the year at about 29% of normal ridership. And then in January, with the public health restrictions, we fell down to 18%. When I talked to you a month ago, we were at 22%. We're now back up to 27%. So we've seen ridership growing very quickly since the schools returned to on-site learning and since the stay-at-home order ended. And we'll continue to watch that and bring up to date. And we continue to look for any needs that our customers have because of changes in their travel pattern or changes in the number of people traveling. The next slide, please. So to this point, there have been 71 of our colleagues at OC Transpo who have tested positive for COVID-19. 68 of those have recovered and are back to work, and there are 3 who continue to recover. And of course, we wish the best to them. And so with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, for any questions.
Thank you very much to both of you for your presentation. I see Commissioner Wright Gilbert is first up with a question.
Wow, I'm never first. Thank you. I only have a couple of questions. Shocking, I know. So with respect to just some questions on the presentation, the fine tuning of the vehicle braking systems, can you tell me what is the expected completion date of this work?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. At this time, we don't have a completion date. We want to make sure that we go through the right set of processes, make sure it's all validated and tested before putting into service. So there's not a firm end date for that right now, but the work is ongoing.
When was the issue of the vehicle braking systems first identified?
Chair, if I may, just in response, I just want to add to what Troy Charter is saying. Like any vehicle, we're going to be working on brakes for 30 years of the life expectancy of these vehicles. It's like any car, any vehicle. So the brakes are working just fine on the vehicles. They have to do some adjustment to the software. And that's the process that they're in right now. We've asked for a schedule on the software adjustments, which looks at everything from brake rates and things like that. But just to be clear, I don't want any surprises down the road. We're going to be working on brakes for 30 years, no different than any other car, your car, a truck, any other vehicle, bus fleets, and so forth. So I don't want to, we'll certainly get you the information, but there's no end date to maintenance on these vehicles. It's forever. What we're looking for is anything that's a major issue that needs addressing, that isn't, that's doing major disruption to services. And right now the brakes are working fine. They require a software upgrade, and a reminder, those vehicles are all software controlled. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for that clarification. However, I would note that, you know, if my new car that was only a year or two old started having brake problems, or, you know, having to have work done on the brakes, I might want to return it. But my second question still stands. When did we start the work on the vehicle braking systems, the fine tuning?
The work with regards to the brake rate adjustments is part of the rectification plan that was identified. You know, I think it's been close to about a year ago now.
So it's been a year since this has been ongoing.
Yeah, but
second question with respect to the presentation, the wheels. Just to get a little bit of clarification, at the last Transit Commission, I specifically asked if the wheels were being replaced, or if the jack screws, which are not actually supposed to be in there according to the TSB, were just being adjusted. Now, I noticed in your presentation, it specifically said that the wheels were being replaced and or set screw is adjusted. Just for clarification, are all the wheels being replaced, or are you only replacing some of them and adjusting the jacking screw in others?
Mr. Chair, I believe we previously communicated at Transit Commission meetings that we would be replacing the wheels that have, you know, I use the term, that have exhibited undue stress as a result of the jacking screw. Wheels that have not had that stress, that's been validated through engineering processes, those wheels are deemed fit for service and would continue. So we'd only be replacing the wheels in which that jacking screw has created some stress that has the potential to result in a crack down the road.
So I guess my question is, why are we leaving the jacking screw in the wheel when the TSB has clearly outlined in their letter that jacking screw was never meant to be installed in the wheel upon shipping, that it was supposed to be plastic or silicone plugs, and that the jacking screw was only meant to be inserted or used when the wheel was being removed? Why are we leaving those jacking screws in when they clearly have a potential for causing issues and aren't meant to be there in the first place?
Chair, sorry, we're not going to comment on TSB's positions. That is up to the TSB, and we're under that. Their investigation needs to be totally independent. And I'm not going to comment on the TSB comments. They are active participants on every step of the way, along with our Chief Safety Officer, metal experts, wheel experts, and Mr. Barata, who's here today. So we're doing what the group has all signed off on. I cannot comment on TSB reports in a public forum. That is for TSB to comment on, and they will do their due diligence and reporting out in accordance with their processes. So I do not want staff commenting on TSB reports.
Thank you, Mr. Manconi. I wasn't actually asking for comment on the TSB report, but here's something I will note. You've said previously that the TSB is not an approving body, that they provide a report, but they don't approve any of your actions. So I understand that TSB is part of your working group, or whatever you want to call it, that RTG is part of and whatnot. But I don't think it's fair for you to say that everyone has, quote unquote, signed off on your plan, given that your original statement that TSB is not an approving party. So I just want to make that point clear.
Commissioner Gilbert, I've been involved in TSB many, many times. There is no objections from anybody on any actions that are being taken, and that is how safety works. If there was a safety concern with any of the action that would be taken, I can assure you that the professionals sitting in the room, that including all of our staff, the independent safety expert, the Chief Safety Officer, Mr. Barata, the TSB, Transport Canada, would state their objection to anything that we're doing in that regard. So again, Mr. Charter is absolutely right. We've said in the past, the wheel is inspected. If there is any flaw to that vehicle, it is replaced. If the set screw can be adjusted, it gets that done, and the wheel is signed off and put back into service.
Why would we not just replace the wheels that, or either replace the wheels or remove the actual jacking screw or set screw as we're now calling it, given that it has potential to cause issues? Why would we leave that screw in there?
Respectfully, Commissioner, you cannot make that assumption that it's going to cause a failure or an issue. Actually, that's not what is being said. It's the opposite. It is the vehicle and the wheel is safe to go back into service in accordance with the processes that the safety experts are putting forward. So we're doing everything that everybody in that room concurs with. There's no objections to any of the processes. And again, there's a lot of people with years and years of experience in this domain that have been involved in this process. So we're doing what the experts all concur with in terms of moving forward.
All right, I'll leave it there. However, I'm not fully satisfied with the responses given. Regarding there were some power issues on March 14th for nearly an hour. R1 service was put into place. Can we get some more details on what the issues were with the power to the system?
Yes, Mr. Chair, on Sunday, we did experience a few power fluctuations that impacted a few of the power substations in the West End. We had staff out there that were working on it at the time, and it takes just sort of like a house. When you experience a power fluctuation, you have a breaker that trips, and you have to physically go and reset that breaker. That's what happened. The investigation is going on in root cause as to why that occurred, but essentially what happened is the power substations experienced some power fluctuations, and that caused them to trip, and there was a bit of a cascading effect in that it affected one, and then it affected another one, and then it affected another one. They had to go back and forth between the substations, and it was right around when we were experiencing some really, really high winds. Don't know if that's related, but that investigation is ongoing right now. So during that period of time, for a short period of time, we had to implement R1, but for most of the day, and mostly during that event, customers would have experienced a few minutes longer travel time, but there was a period of time, I think it was about 30-45 minutes around there, in which we did have to activate R1. And that was largely because they were out working on those substations, and we didn't want to start service up again and then only to have another power glitch and have to have passengers again on trains. So we're proactive in that regard in getting R1 going, and then when things were stabilized, service returned to normal very quickly.
Thank you for that additional information. I appreciate it. My final question has to do with our fare payment machines. We seem to be having some ongoing issues. Specifically, the longest one that I could find record of was on February 26th, where debit and credit was not available as a payment method from 9:50 a.m. until 7:15 p.m. Can you provide some information about the outstanding issues with our fare machines and what's being done to rectify these issues so that we don't continue to inconvenience customers?
Chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Scrimgeour to comment on that, but just a comment to all members of the commission. We have a very special contract with our supplier. There's a process for recovering any fare loss. Secondly, if customers cannot get a ticket, we let them in. We have cameras there and we can scan them through, and we have attendants that get out there for that. We've had very, very good performance on the system, and Pat can speak to what happened that day. Pat?
Yes, thanks, John. Yes, we had two occasions when the connection with Moneris from the ticket machines, the connection to Moneris, who validates credit and debit cards, was not flowing properly, was interrupted, and the service wasn't available for customers. During that time, as John mentioned, cash payments continued to be possible, Presto card payments continued to be possible, all payments on the buses and all payments on the fare gates continued to work. Also, as John mentioned, our contract with Scheitenbachmann includes a guarantee of 100% uptime, and therefore any revenue that we calculate we would have lost as a result is replaced under the terms of the contract. But Scheitenbachmann has escalated this to the very most senior levels in their service organization. They're chasing it down for both here in Ottawa with their connections with the payment systems here in Canada, and they're looking at their core software back in Germany, where their head office is, and Slovakia, where their primary software development is done. They've got a full court press on this, and they will be reporting back to us on what they found, what they find caused these problems, how they responded to these problems, and how they're going to improve both the software and their response protocols.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Chair, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up is Commissioner Brockington.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to you and colleagues. Thank you, staff, for the presentation, Mr. Charter and Scrimger. Just a few questions. Mr. Charter, a question I'll ask again from last month, and that is, first of all, the performance numbers of the Confed line are still very good, 98%. You reported less variability in the times where service slows down or is not being met. And my question is, are there any trends when service is down over time that we can focus our attention on to ensure that if people are being impacted same time of day, for example, over and over again, we can focus in on that? Or are the issues with performance just scattered and we're not able to pinpoint a certain time and day?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you for that. With regards to trends, there's no real identifiable trends in terms of time of day or even day of the week. I mean, you will potentially see more issues, at vehicle launch when vehicles are going out for the first of the day. But launch is at 5 o'clock in the morning, and if there's any issues, we generally are able to rectify them or get that train off the line prior to it impacting customers. But there's no real trend in terms of day of the week or time of day. But we are seeing a lot of positive trends in things like, the number of disruptions that are occurring. The frequency of them is becoming less and less, and then the impact of them as well is becoming less and less. And doors is the prime example of that. We've seen a huge increase in reliability of doors. And then even if when there is a minor door issue, it's a minor issue. It's not a major issue. So real positive performance in that regard.
Excellent, thank you. Eric, would I be able to ask you to put a slide back up, Mr. Charter's presentation? It's slide number 7, switch heaters. Excellent. Mr. Charter, the service delivery column, let's just look at the very last row. March 2nd, 6.4 centimeters, 96.1%. What does that mean exactly?
Okay, so on March 2nd, the service delivered for that day was 96% or 96.1% of the planned service that we scheduled. And then the last column there, the check mark is there was no disruptions or impacts associated with switches or switch heaters on that day.
Okay, I thought this was talking about switch heaters, but this is the performance of the line on that day. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so to go back to switch heaters then, how are things going with switch heaters? Are you saying that we really have not had any issues this winter?
No, we have not had any service affecting issues. I mean, all vehicles, you're sort of to Mr. Manconi's point earlier with regards to the trains themselves. I mean, we are working on them. There's ongoing maintenance. There's ongoing things that we need to work through. But no, there's been no service affecting issues with switch heaters or switches. And if you look back at where we were last winter, it was one of those more common occurrences. But no, very, very pleased with the performance of both the switches and the switch heaters during this winter season.
Okay, thank you. My last question is regarding a matter that made the news, at least I believe in December, and I apologize for not asking the question since then, but it was water in Rideau Station, and it seemed like there was more water than normal in the station at that time. Can you just comment further on what the issue was then, whether it continues to be an issue, and how we're monitoring?
Yeah, if my memory serves me correctly, that was an occurrence in which there was a pipe that had burst.
Okay.
And it was a pipe that feeds the staff washrooms at the station. So that pipe burst. It was leaking into the tunnel. RTG came, closed off the water supply, and fixed the pipe within a day or within a couple hours.
Okay, that's good. Thanks very much for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor, for your questions. Next up, Commissioner Olson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric, could I ask you to put up slide 5 from the presentation, please? Thank you. Mr. Charter, thank you for the presentation. It's good to see that things are in the green for many months now. It's really great. I have one question, and that is with respect to the outliers on this graph, the little gray dots. They seem to be sort of all over the place. There doesn't appear to be, to my eye, any trend in the number of outliers. It doesn't seem to be necessarily improving or getting worse. Is there anything that we can learn from outlier events to try and reduce the number of future outlier events? Or do we just have to accept these as things that we cannot predict, but that they will happen in future?
Thank you for that. It's a good question. With regards to the outliers, you know, there are things that we can learn from them in terms of our operational response or what the actual issue is with regards to the vehicle, the track, or the train. You know, so our focus is when we have those events is to reduce the impact to our customers and, you know, maintain service as best we can. You know, and what we've seen in the past several months is when we have these occurrences, generally what customers are experiencing is, you know, longer travel times or longer wait times of a few minutes. We're seeing very, very few occurrences where we'd have to implement R1. Unfortunately, we did last weekend, but you look at the number of occurrences of R1, you don't see them very often. What we're doing more often, if we need to do something, is single track around, you know, the vehicle. That tends to be one of our more common occurrences is vehicle related issues. You know, so it's not that we have to accept them, but there will be delays on the line. There will be disruptions. I mean, if you look at other transit properties like, you know, Toronto or Montreal, they're much bigger systems, I know, but they do on average, you know, several short temporary disruptions on a daily basis. So we will have disruptions and, you know, it will occur, but those impactful ones that where you see that really drop in performance for that day, you know, that's what we're working on reducing even more. But there will be disruptions, and you know, it's how we react and respond and rectify them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charter. Mr. Chairman, that's the only question I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Okay, seeing no other questions, that concludes the update presentation. Is this update received, please?
Received.
Received, thank you. Okay, our next item up is the Light Rail Regulatory Monitor and Compliance Officer Annual Report for 2020. We have
Le
no...
rapport annuel pour 2021, il n'y a pas de délégation, mais nous avons une présentation sur de la part de notre agente.
Great. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to provide Transit Commission with
Alors, j'apprécie, nous allons vous donner un aperçu du rapport de conformité annuel qui a été présenté. J'ai environ une douzaine de diapositives qui présentent nos résultats. Lorsqu'on aura terminé avec la présentation, je serai heureux de répondre à vos questions. Et à ce moment-là, nous aurons le rapport annuel pour vous. Donc, y a-t-il des questions avant de commencer aujourd'hui la présentation? Sinon, passons directement à la diapositive numéro 2. Ici, nous voyons notre ordre du jour. Nous allons parler du mandat, du contexte en matière de surveillance. Nous ferons un examen de l'approche de surveillance. Nous verrons aussi quels sont les éléments que nous avons surveillés en 2020 ainsi que les résultats généraux, puis les mesures de rectification. Nous terminerons par un sommaire de ce que nous allons prévoir pour le prochain trimestre. À la diapositive numéro 3, c'est une présentation générale du mandat et de la portée de son mandat. Alors, cela fait partie des ententes qui ont été signées entre la Ville et le ministère des Transports. En résumé, c'est tout simplement de surveiller la conformité à l'aspect réglementaire. Alors, le mandat avec l'ASCR était très spécifique. Cela s'applique uniquement à la ligne Confédération. Ça ne s'applique pas à la ligne Trillium. Puis, la surveillance a commencé après et ne s'est pas inclus dans la mise en œuvre. De plus, la CSR n'est pas là pour évaluer l'adéquation de la réglementation, l'adéquation de l'équipement, de la technologie, ni les programmes. Et ce ne sont pas eux non plus qui évaluent la fiabilité des technologies utilisées. Ceci étant dit, un point important à se rappeler, c'est que la SCR est l'une des couches de surveillance qui ont été mises en place auprès de la Ville. Comme vous savez, OC Transpo a déjà un groupe de surveillance. La Ville embauche des experts pour procéder aux vérifications et aux évaluations. Tout ça ensemble permet de réduire les risques et d'offrir un fonctionnement sécuritaire. Ici, à l'écran, on voit un aperçu du contexte et ce que nous avons surveillé en 2020. En 2020, nous avons été très occupés en matière de surveillance. Cela incluait les voies ferrées, les voitures ainsi que le système caténaire. Pour vous donner un peu plus de contexte, ces systèmes sont composés de milliers de composantes qui sont inspectées et entretenues par différents employés et chacun d'entre eux ont différentes tâches quotidiennes. Il faut aussi se rappeler que la période de surveillance comprend la première année de revenus de l'année, ce qui comprend aussi le premier hiver. Donc, dans l'ensemble, la surveillance était très large et tout ça mis ensemble, c'était l'équipement, la technologie, les processus ainsi que les employés. J'aimerais aussi rajouter, de façon générale, fondée sur mon expérience en tant que vice-président de la fiabilité, la Ville d'Ottawa a investi en technologies évoluées et en infrastructures qui atténuent les risques auxquels font face les autres opérateurs de services de transport en commun. Alors, dans mon poste antérieur, je restais parfois réveillée la nuit car j'étais préoccupée. Mais je vous donnerai 3 exemples pour la ligne de la Confédération. Tout d'abord, il n'y a pas de passage à niveau dans la ligne Confédération. Habituellement, c'est un risque considérable pour ceux qui utilisent les systèmes en transport et les autres véhicules. De plus, ces voies sont dédiées. Dans d'autres régions, les voies sont divisées et utilisées par d'autres types d'équipements ou de véhicules. Troisièmement, dans la plupart des voies ferrées, les opérateurs doivent identifier et respecter la réglementation. Autrement dit, il faut avoir une visibilité, regarder les feux de signalisation et les respecter. Donc, il faut avoir une habileté cognitive pour reconnaître les signaux et y réagir. Comme vous savez, la ligne de la Confédération, on a investi énormément en systèmes visuels pour essayer de contrôler en fait les mouvements des voitures et du train. La diapositive 5 vous montre quelle approche de surveillance nous avons approuvée en septembre 2018. Un plan de travail a été approuvé. En résumé, cette approche est fondée sur les risques. Nous voulons surveiller de façon progressive les zones de risque qui sont plus difficiles à surveiller. Je vous dirais que le système de surveillance est un processus continu. Il se poursuivra au fil des mois. Nous allons réévaluer les zones à risque et nous allons aussi nous attaquer à des risques lorsqu'ils sont identifiés. En 2020, voici un aperçu de ce que nous avons fait. Nous avons, comme je vous l'ai dit plus tôt, surveillé 3 zones. Donc, ces 3 zones de surveillance, les travaux ont été effectués par Alstom. Non seulement ils font les inspections, ils font l'entretien des voitures, mais ils sont aussi un contrat de sous-traitance pour entretenir les voies ferrées ainsi que le système de suspension caténaire pour la ligne de la Confédération. Dans les prochaines diapositives, nous vous présenterons les détails. Les résultats nous démontrent des zones où nous sommes très forts et aussi des opportunités. Ici, à l'écran, ce sont les documents et les processus pour la voie ferrée. Je vous dirais qu'à chaque fois que nous découvrons des enjeux, nous procédons à des mesures correctives. Donc, pour chaque segment surveillé, l'examen recouvre les documents, les systèmes, les processus, la formation. Tout simplement, nous voulons donner à la ville les preuves que la réglementation n'est pas non seulement sur papier, mais aussi mise en œuvre sur le terrain. Lorsqu'on procède à la vérification des voies ferrées et aux réparations, les documents démontrent comment et à quel moment nous procédons aux inspections. Parfois, il y a eu quelques petits enjeux par rapport à des critères manquants. Nous avons aussi des petites difficultés lorsque les températures fluctuent énormément. Quant au système et au processus, Alstom utilise un système informatique robuste. Mais nous avons découvert aussi une opportunité afin d'améliorer le système de signalement et de signaler toutes les inspections qui n'ont pas été effectuées en temps opportun. Alors voici en résumé ce que nous avons découvert. Quant à la formation est en cours. Nous avons une matrice qui nous a été fournie par Alstom. Il y a eu quelques employés qui, malheureusement, n'ont pas reçu tous les cours nécessaires. La deuxième opportunité identifiée, c'est qu'il nous manque un peu de surveillance sur le terrain. Quant à l'exécution, nous avons examiné 9 types d'inspection des voies ferrées. 4 étaient entièrement conformes, 3 généralement conformes et 2 partiellement conformes. Cela correspond à l'inspection numéro 5 du rapport de vérification annuel. Vous remarquez que les données surveillées lorsqu'on examine ces inspections des voies ferrées provenaient de la première moitié de 2020, le premier semestre. La plupart des enjeux cernés ont eu lieu lors de la première année d'opération en hiver. Quant aux réparations, nous avons examiné 300 dossiers de réparation et sont aperçus que 3/4 ont été effectués à temps et 25 ont été effectués un peu plus tard. À la diapositive numéro 9, ici, ce sont les voitures du train léger ainsi que le système de suspension caténaire. Encore une fois, nous avons fait un examen des documents et ça vous donne une idée un peu. Près d'une centaine de documents ont été mis au point et sont fournis par Alstom. Cela précise à quel moment et comment nous devons procéder aux inspections. Beaucoup de travail a été effectué pour que les attentes soient très claires, à savoir à quel moment doit-on procéder aux inspections et comment elles seront faites. Tout d'abord, nous avons découvert qu'il y avait une incohérence entre les documents sur la tolérance après tant de kilomètres et savoir que faire lorsqu'on dépasse les limites de kilométrage. Puis, on a découvert qu'on n'avait pas de critères lorsqu'on avait des températures extrêmes pour les voitures et pour les instructions des systèmes caténaires. Encore une fois, nous avons un système d'information robuste et il n'y a eu aucun problème qui a été signalé ni aucune opportunité. Diapositive numéro 9. C'est un examen de la formation ainsi que de l'exécution des inspections des réparations. Dans la structure et dans la matrice, on a vraiment bien identifié les cours que les employés doivent prendre, et ce par type ou catégorie d'employés. On s'est aperçu, après un examen, que ce n'est pas l'ensemble des cours qui ont été offerts à certains employés, que ce soit aux techniciens responsables des systèmes d'alimentation, donc l'entretien des systèmes de suspension caténaire, ainsi que pour ceux qui sont responsables des inspections des véhicules et des voitures. Suite à l'analyse, nous avons des données sur les réparations et les inspections, les dossiers sont là. Les calendriers d'inspection sont fondés sur le kilométrage. Ils ont été faits selon les critères. Cependant, quelques voitures du train léger n'ont pas eu leur inspection à la date prévue. Et encore une fois, la plupart des enjeux mécaniques auxquels nous avons fait face ont eu lieu lors du premier hiver. La plupart des inspections ont respecté le calendrier d'exécution. Je vous dirais qu'environ 10 des inspections ont été faits plus tard au cours du dernier hiver. On s'est aperçu aussi que certains dossiers de réparation étaient absents pour les voitures et on s'est aperçu aussi qu'il y avait la même chose qui était arrivée avec les systèmes caténaires. Certains dossiers étaient manquants. À la diapositive numéro 9, nous avons les mesures de correction. Donc, nous surveillons plusieurs systèmes. Certains étaient non conformes à la réglementation. Nous voulons nous assurer qu'il y ait un processus de suivi. Je peux vous assurer que nous avons effectué un processus de correctif très solide. Le processus a envoyé cette information assez rapidement à la Commission. La SCR partage immédiatement les résultats avant même qu'on ait mis de l'avant des mesures correctives. On essaie d'être le plus rapide possible. Deuxièmement, OC Transpo et la SRC communiquent de façon régulière afin de partager les résultats. Puis, nous avons une approche structurée afin de pouvoir faire le suivi et de s'assurer que nous sommes conformes. Puis, il y a un examen trimestriel en cours de façon permanente et à l'annexe numéro 5 du rapport annuel, vous avez le tableau complet de toutes les mesures correctives qui ont été mises en place. Ce qui m'amène à la dernière diapositive, c'est un aperçu de ce que nous avons discuté. Dans l'ensemble, comme on l'a dit, la portée de la surveillance était assez complète. On a identifié certaines possibilités, certaines forces. Nous allons procéder à un processus de mesures correctrices structurées au cours des prochains mois. Suite à cette réunion, nous voulons déposer le rapport de la Commission à la Ville et nous continuerons à procéder aux surveillances en 2021. Nous allons recommencer à surveiller en mois d'avril en mettant l'accent sur les zones à risque qui n'avaient pas été surveillées à ce jour. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. C'est la fin de ma présentation aujourd'hui. Je vous redonne la parole. Merci beaucoup pour cet excellent rapport. Y a-t-il des questions pour l'instant? Conseillère McKinney, allez-y. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci pour la mise à jour. Question de clarification. C'est un document assez complet. Je suis en train de le parcourir. Vous avez dit que la RTM n'a pas procédé aux inspections nécessaires au cours de janvier et février 2020. Pourquoi? Pourquoi n'ont-ils pas procédé ou déposé plutôt les rapports d'inspection pour ces 2 mois? Merci pour la question. Je répondrai de la façon suivante. Tout d'abord, l'agent de surveillance et de contrôle réglementaire présente ses rapports à la Ville. Nous n'enquêtons pas sur les causes. Mais si on prend un peu de recul et qu'on revient sur les points qui ont été mentionnés, c'est une opération de grande portée. Il y a beaucoup de technologies, il y a des processus. On parle aussi de la main-d'œuvre. La surveillance mettait l'accent sur lors de la première année de revenus. On sait que l'hiver, c'était en fait le premier hiver d'opération. Et vous savez que pour n'importe quel système de transport en commun, il y a beaucoup d'enjeux l'hiver. Même nous, lorsque nous conduisons nos propres voitures, nous devons être beaucoup plus prudents. Nous ralentissons sur la route. Il y a plus de travail à effectuer, notamment davantage d'entretien. Alors, je ne donnerai pas une réponse directe à savoir pourquoi les rapports de janvier-février n'ont pas été déposés, mais je voulais donner un peu d'explication par rapport aux différents facteurs qui auraient pu rendre le dépôt de ces rapports plus difficile, principalement dans les premiers mois d'opération. Je comprends que l'hiver, c'est beaucoup plus difficile. Mais ils sont supposés procéder aux inspections et déposer des rapports. En vertu du rapport d'inspection de la voie ferrée, Alstom a seulement procédé à 2 inspections en cas de température extrême, alors que le processus demande 5 inspections ou plus. Encore une fois, pourquoi ne nous assurons pas que ces inspections ont vraiment lieu en vertu de l'entente et du calendrier d'exécution? L'agent a commenté dans son rapport à ce sujet, mais vous avez raison. 5 inspections spécifiques sont précisées lorsqu'on a des fluctuations ou des températures extrêmes. 2 ont été exécutées. Cela a trait à la surveillance des températures extrêmes et nous devons être assez rapides après qu'on ait enregistré ces fluctuations de température. Mais il ne s'agit que d'un des facteurs de l'ensemble du portefeuille des activités surveillées. Nous avons des inspections quotidiennes, des inspections 2 fois par semaine, des inspections mensuelles, trimestrielles. En matière de charge de travail, l'inspection n'est pas, disons, une grosse partie du travail général. Mais je vous dirais que de façon générale, c'était un démarrage opérationnel à cette époque. On avait une courbe d'apprentissage et ce n'est pas inattendu, principalement lorsqu'on a beaucoup de composantes et de technologies utilisées en même temps. Comme je vous l'ai dit, l'hiver, les opérations en hiver sont très difficiles car il y a eu beaucoup de variations de la charge de travail et c'est le cas pour n'importe quel type d'opération. Lorsqu'on examine les opérations dans son ensemble, dans les 9 domaines surveillés, 4 étant entièrement conformes, 3 généralement conformes et 2 partiellement conformes. Encore une fois, respectueusement, alors, très souvent, on laisse l'RTM et la GTR un peu. Lorsqu'on s'aperçoit qu'il y a des documents d'inspection manquants, en fait, ils doivent procéder à certaines inspections selon un calendrier d'exécution. Lorsque ce n'est pas fait, il y a des problèmes. Car on s'est aperçu l'hiver passé qu'il y a eu des problèmes avec la ligne de la Confédération. Cette année, l'achalandage était beaucoup moindre. C'était vraiment différent de l'année 2020. Les événements météorologiques de température extrême, est-ce que vous procédez aux inspections à l'heure? Alors, pensez-vous que l'ASCR va encore mentionner ce petit problème dans son prochain rapport? Car je vous dirais que les gens perdent de foi dans l'engagement de la RTM et qu'ils ne respectent pas l'entente qui a été signée avec la Ville d'Ottawa pour ce système. Donc, c'est un peu préoccupant selon moi. Je vois que certaines inspections n'ont pas eu lieu selon le calendrier d'exécution et selon l'entente. Est-ce que vous procédez à ces inspections à l'heure actuelle? Est-ce que vous procédez à des inspections lorsqu'il y a eu des fluctuations extrêmes de température cette année? Je peux vous réassurer. On a un processus en place, structuré. Nous avons fait une surveillance suite à la découverte de ces enjeux. Cette année, il y a eu un enjeu en raison de la température extrême. On s'est vraiment assuré que l'inspection a eu lieu. Ceci dit, il n'y a aucun doute. Lors de la première année d'opération en hiver, lors du premier hiver, On a eu des petits problèmes d'inspection, mais je vous dirais que la situation s'est améliorée. Cette année, on n'a pas fait une inspection aussi complète des voies ferrées pour l'instant, mais je vous dirais que le calendrier d'exécution des inspections a été respecté cette année. Dernière question. Est-ce que vous allez déposer un rapport complet de ces inspections cette année?
John, did you want to speak to that?
John, voulez-vous répondre?
Certainly, Chair, in relation to this, Commissioner McKenney?
Yes,
Vous
absolutely.
voulez dire par rapport aux inspections? Donc, pour moi, je vous dirais, j'aimerais savoir quels sont les travaux qui ont été menés pour nous assurer que tout va bien. Je sais que l'hiver on a eu un bon hiver cette année. Il y a beaucoup moins d'achalandage aussi cette année. Mais ce que j'aimerais voir, ce serait des activités de surveillance et d'inspection cohérentes et permanentes du système dans son ensemble. Mais j'aimerais bien qu'on ait un rapport déposé sur les travaux. Vous avez mis le doigt en plein dessus. Je vous dirais que le système fonctionne, le processus fonctionne. Nous avons mis en place un système de surveillance. Encore une fois, en Amérique du Nord, nous sommes le seul voie ferrée autoréglementée qui a été mise en œuvre. Alors, nous déposons un rapport à la direction générale de la Ville d'Ottawa. Je serais préoccupée si jamais il n'y avait aucun problème décelé, principalement en tout début. Donc, vous avez tout à fait raison. Vous savez lorsqu'on découvre un enjeu, il faut avoir une solution et l'entreprise est imputable. J'aurais été très préoccupée si jamais un rapport a été déposé, qu'il n'y aurait eu aucun problème, que tout roulait. Alors, c'est tout simplement une question de rééquilibrer la situation. Monsieur Barada est un spécialiste. Il sait quoi chercher. Ils ont découvert quelques lacunes. Il n'y a aucun risque à la sécurité. Des éléments doivent être mettre en place. Et c'est ce qu'on fait dans les voies ferrées. Si on doit en fermer une, on ferme une voie ferrée et on procède aux réparations. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci beaucoup. Je donne maintenant la parole au conseiller Brockington. Question rapide. Vous avez soumis des recommandations avec ce rapport. Vous avez un plan de rémédiation qui a été élaboré. Alors, la responsabilité du suivi incombe à OC Transpo, exact? Exact. OC Transpo est responsable. Monsieur Manconi, comment prévoyez-vous informer la Commission du transport en commun des travaux qui ont été achevés découlant de cette vérification? Je serais heureux de vous présenter un rapport verbal lors de votre prochaine réunion. On a 2 personnes responsables pour ce dossier et nous travaillons avec la RTM pour combler ces lacunes. Merci. Question de suivi? Monsieur Berada, dans votre rapport 2020-2021, donc l'an prochain, vous allez présenter un autre rapport à la Commission. Allez-vous revoir les recommandations soumises fondées sur le rapport de 2020 pour s'assurer que tout ce qui a été recommandé a eu un suivi? Allez-vous procéder à cet examen et à ce suivi? Oui, nous allons le faire. C'est justement à l'annexe 5 du rapport annuel. Vous avez un tableau détaillé avec toutes les mesures correctives qui seront mises en œuvre ou qui ont été mises en œuvre. C'est un processus permanent. Nous allons revoir cette structure à tous les trimestres. Nous allons procéder aussi à un examen avec tous les intervenants, voir où nous en sommes. Nous allons aussi procéder à de la surveillance et selon les risques évalués, nous reverrons certaines de ces recommandations. Je vous dirais donc que la première priorité, c'est de s'assurer que nous couvrons bien les 6 zones à risque. Nous en avons couvert 4 pour l'instant. Cette année, nous mettrons l'accent sur à la surveillance et ensuite, quand on commencera à revoir les secteurs qui ont déjà été examinés, on verra ce que nous avions trouvé et ce qui a été fait. Monsieur Manconi, ma suggestion, je ne vous donne pas de directive, c'est que si ces rapports annuels devraient nous être présentés en mars, à mi-chemin entre le rapport annuel qui est prévu pour septembre, est-ce une bonne gouvernance à la réunion de septembre que nous recevions une brève mise à jour sur voilà les recommandations qui ont été faites en mars et voici ce qui a été accompli pour donner suite à ces recommandations. À la Commission, on vous donne simplement une mise à jour sur ce qui a été fait. C'est ce que je suggérerais. Parce qu'ainsi, on saura ce qui a été fait, on aurait les recommandations qui étaient dans le rapport et ce qu'OC Transpo a fait pour assurer le suivi. Ce serait la meilleure façon de procéder, je pense. Merci, commissaire. J'aimerais que M. O'Connor commente là-dessus. Moi, il faut que je reste indépendant du processus. Je ne voudrais pas compromettre cette indépendance. Alors, M. O'Connor, avez-vous un avis là-dessus ou est-ce qu'on peut simplement y revenir plus tard? Et moi, j'aime bien comment le commissaire s'est exprimé. Nous allons en prendre acte. Bon, ben d'accord, merci. Merci, conseiller. Commissaire Wright-Gilbert. Monsieur Barata, à la page 21 de votre rapport au sujet de la formation des employés, seulement la moitié des employés ont suivi tous les cours nécessaires. Et je pense qu'il y a eu des problèmes pour la catégorie de surveillance sur le terrain. Est-ce qu'on vous donne des détails sur les problèmes qui sont survenus? Oui, bien sûr. Et à titre de précision, les possibilités ne sont pas le plus bas niveau. Le plus bas niveau, c'est non conforme. Possibilité, bon, c'est quelque chose qui doit être amélioré, mais au moins, il y a une base d'établie. Et dans ce cas-ci, comme je l'ai dit sur les diapos que j'ai présentés, il y a une matrice de formation. Il y a des directives bien claires quant aux attentes. Et ce que j'ai vu lors de la surveillance, c'est qu'il y a des employés qui ont été embauchés au cours des derniers mois, qui ont été formés progressivement. Et la matrice de formation était très générale. Elle prévoyait vraiment plusieurs cours. Et on voulait que Alstom examine tous ces cours en se demandant, avant qu'on permette à un employé de travailler, qu'on demande donc à un employé qui a plus d'expérience, quels sont les cours minimums, par exemple, les règles d'opération, ligne directrice d'inspection de la voie ferrée. Et c'est exactement ce qui a été fait parce qu'ils ont répondu que oui, cette matrice est très, très exhaustive. On a des employés qui ont déjà beaucoup plus d'expérience et aux fins de clarté, j'ai dit qu'ils devaient préciser pour eux-mêmes à l'interne comme pour le processus de surveillance de la ville, lesquels de ces cours sont vraiment essentiels avant qu'on permette à quelqu'un de travailler sous quelqu'un qui a plus d'expérience. Alors, je pense que les choses vont s'améliorer avec le temps. Pour ce qui est de la surveillance de supervision, Je dois dire que les groupes d'employés qu'on a vus sur le terrain étaient toujours avec quelqu'un d'expérience et les autres, certains avaient de l'expérience, d'autres moins. Alors, il y a quand même un certain niveau de supervision avec le responsable du groupe. Mais cela étant dit, il y a toujours place à l'amélioration avec la surveillance des activités sur le terrain quant à leur complétude et à leur efficacité. Alors, les voies ferrées, les opérations pour les passagers feront l'objet de surveillance. OC Transpo a ces processus pour les opérateurs qui sont sur le terrain. Il y a des superviseurs qui se rendent sur le terrain pour faire des tests. Et c'est ce qui manquait avec Alstom, qui a convenu maintenant de prévoir cela, pas seulement pour les tests structurels, mais aussi un système de 3P qui examine les pièces, les processus et les personnes de façon plus formelle. Alors, quand vous dites qu'il y a des problèmes avec la supervision sur le terrain, par souci de clarté, j'ai lu le rapport, mais on dirait que j'entends quelque chose de différent maintenant. C'est peut-être simplement à cause de mon interprétation. Je vais être certaine de bien comprendre. Ce n'est pas que la supervision sur le terrain était absente, c'est simplement qu'elle n'était pas aussi rigoureuse. Oui, c'est une bonne façon de le dire. Il y a définitivement un superviseur sur place qui passent du temps sur le terrain. On parle de Alstom parce que leurs employés doivent faire les inspections, mais le suivi, les dossiers, les lignes de défense requièrent de la structure. Et quand on parle d'opportunité, c'est leur opportunité maintenant de lever la barre sur quelque chose qui est fait, mais qui n'est pas aussi structuré que ça le devrait. Et pour ces choses, il y a déjà des cours. Oui. Alors, honnêtement, moi, quand j'ai lu le rapport, et là encore, c'est probablement à cause de mon interprétation, mais il y a bien des gens qui vont lire ces rapports, alors je veux être bien clair. À la page 21, quand on dit qu'il n'y a que la moitié des employés d'Alstom qui ont reçu tous les cours requis et qu'il y avait des problèmes avec la surveillance des superviseurs sur le terrain. Alors, on suppose que 50 des employés d'Alstom se promènent là, sans savoir trop ce qu'ils font. C'est certain que la matrice était très vaste, mais on peut être rassuré qu'ils ont quand même reçu la formation nécessaire pour faire leur travail spécifique, mais ils ont encore besoin de supervision, n'est-ce pas? Oui, exact. Et à titre de précision, on parle ici de techniciens et d'échantillonnage de surveillance. Alors, on ne vérifie pas les dossiers de chaque employé. Disons qu'on en prend 6 sur les 12 qui sont techniciens. Et sur ça, on en a trouvé 3 qui avaient suivi tous les cours et d'autres qui n'avaient suivi que quelques-uns. Alors, ça devient une question pour Alstom de spécifier cette matrice, sur cette matrice très vaste, lesquels cours sont vraiment une nécessité, même s'il y a supervision ou quelqu'un de plus expérimenté sur place. Bon, je comprends mieux. Et à la page 28 aussi, le rapport dit que 10 à peu près 10 des employés d'Alstom qui travaillent sur les véhicules, les voitures de train, n'avaient pas reçu toute la formation requise. Est-ce qu'il y a alors un programme de surveillance en place pour ces gens qui travaillent sur les voitures? Oui, il y a un superviseur au MSF qui planifie le travail et surveille le travail des employés. Il est au bureau là-bas, mais il est aussi sur le terrain, sur le terrain. Et ces 10 je suppose que c'est fait avec un échantillonnage comme l'autre? Oui. Et est-ce encore une question de matériel de formation reposant sur une matrice très générale et ils n'ont pas encore réussi à suivre tous les cours. Exactement, oui, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de cours. Certains sont techniques, d'autres portent sur la santé et la sécurité. Et dans ce cas-ci en particulier, la grande majorité des cours sont en termes généraux, c'est pour la formation des techniciens d'entretien des voitures, qui est beaucoup plus avancé que tous les autres cours que j'ai déjà vus. Alors, il n'y a que 2 employés sur les 20 à qui il manquait quelques cours qui étaient davantage en matière de santé et de sécurité. Je sais que vous avez certainement un plan de mesures correctrices et comme RTM, mais je suppose qu'on peut s'attendre qu'avant longtemps, peut-être qu'en septembre, vous pourrez nous dire que tous les employés ont suivi les cours requis. Oui, pour être bien précis, comme je l'ai dit, la priorité de l'agent de surveillance, c'est de contrôler les 6 secteurs clés. On en a fait 4 et la surveillance est faite pour chacun des secteurs de risque, la voie ferrée, les voitures et le système caténaire. Mais aussi, on a une perspective à plusieurs facettes, documentation, processus, formation et mise à exécution. Et la raison étant pour que le conseil municipal ait une image bien claire de la conformité, pas seulement à savoir que tous les critères ont été respectés, mais qu'ils ont été mis à exécution. Donc, cette année, nous allons nous concentrer sur 2 secteurs de risque qui n'ont pas été surveillés jusqu'à maintenant. Mais on va revenir aussi aux voitures, aux voies ferrées et au système caténaire. Et quand on y viendra, bien sûr, la priorité sera les secteurs non conformes, comme les autres secteurs, parce que chaque secteur est très vaste. Alors, il faut tenir compte aussi des facteurs humains. On en a surveillé à l'automne 2019. Par exemple, on s'est penché sur la formation, puisque c'est la base même de toute opération sécuritaire. Mais on a aussi passé aux employés impliqués dans le mouvement des voitures et des trains, les opérateurs, il y a différents groupes d'employés ici. Mais quand on recommencera avec les facteurs humains, on se penchera sur la formation, mais on se penchera également peut-être sur autre chose comme les heures de service, la fatigue, le conditionnement physique, en fait. Alors, en bref, oui, ce sera fait, mais en fonction d'une base priorisée. Mais on va aussi se concentrer sur la formation et la surveillance. Et puis, on restera connecté à toute nouvelle information parce que, par exemple, moi, j'étudie constamment le genre de problèmes que l'on rencontre sur le terrain pour qu'on puisse décider ce qu'il y a lieu de surveiller la prochaine fois. On regarde les données sur la réglementation, mais aussi les services véritables qui nous aidera à nous concentrer sur les choses qui ont vraiment de l'impact. Ma dernière question, j'ai vu dans le rapport qu'il y avait des opportunités ou des conformités partielles seulement. Par exemple, pour l'inspection des voies ferrées, comme l'a dit la conseillère McKenney, ça a été fait dans 60 des cas. Et est-ce que, d'après vous, comme professionnel en la matière et notre agent de conformité, pensez-vous que c'est quelque chose qui devrait nous inquiéter, que la tenue de dossier, entre autres, semble un peu lacunaire? Je commencerai par vous dire, comme je l'ai fait plus tôt, que l'agent de surveillance fait rapport à la ville et ne fait pas enquête sur les causes. Alors, je n'ai pas été chercher pour voir pourquoi il y avait eu des manquements, mais d'expérience, je peux vous dire que la documentation et la tenue de dossier est toujours un gros problème pour bien des systèmes comparables. Merci, c'est tout pour mes questions. Conseiller Eglaï. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci de me permettre d'intervenir à la commission. Monsieur Barata, j'ai quelques questions pour vous. D'abord, au début de votre présentation, vous avez dit qu'OC et la ville avaient investi dans de la technologie que vous n'aviez pas vue ailleurs en matière de sécurité. Mais les exemples que vous nous avez donnés, je ne pense pas étaient très technologiques. Vous avez parlé de passage à niveau, oui, que l'on n'avait pas et que les lignes n'étaient pas partagées avec d'autres voitures qui transportent des marchandises peut-être dangereuses. Mais pouvez-vous nous donner des exemples? Là encore, je ne trouve pas que en fait, c'est une bonne chose, mais est-ce qu'il y a d'autres solutions que nous avons en place, technologiques, comme des programmes que vous n'avez pas vus ailleurs et que nous avons et qui améliorent notre ligne ferroviaire? Oui, j'ai donné 3 exemples. Vous avez absolument raison. Le genre de choses qui sont des problèmes là, pour plusieurs exploitations de systèmes ferroviaires, les passages à niveau, mais j'ai aussi parlé de système de contrôle de communication qui est très, très technologique dans ce cas-ci. Vous avez peut-être lu que les systèmes ferroviaires en Amérique du Nord ont investi des milliards pour offrir le PTC à leurs services et c'est maintenant obligatoire aux États-Unis, pas encore au Canada. Mais ce que cela fait, comme j'ai dit, quelqu'un qui est opérateur de train, et- il devra contrôler les indications de la signalisation et comprendre ce que les signaux signifient et prendre les mesures nécessaires, que ce soit ralentir ou arrêter le mouvement. Et ça, c'est quelque chose sur notre liste. Si vous lisez le site web de PSB, vous verrez ce qui est important pour eux avec les voies ferrées, c'est ça. Ça, c'est une priorité depuis des années parce qu'il y a des accidents qui arrivent avec les signaux ferroviaires qui ne sont pas respectés. Et ça, ce n'est pas seulement au Canada et aux États-Unis, c'est partout dans le monde. J'ai fait de la recherche en Europe et dans d'autres pays. C'est la même chose. Alors, la Ville a investi dans ce système de communication très sophistiqué, comme j'ai dit, qui est conçu pour avoir un contrôle positif sur tous les mouvements. Merci. Sur le plan des opérations, votre rôle est plutôt unique. Vous travaillez en silo, finalement. Vous n'êtes pas avec OC Transpo, ni Alstom, ni RTG, mais vous devez travailler avec tout le monde. Et en faisant votre rapport et vous acquittant de vos responsabilités, avez-vous rencontré des problèmes avec l'une ou l'autre de ces parties avec qui vous devez traiter parce qu'ils ne vous donnaient pas de l'information à temps ou parce qu'ils n'étaient pas présents à la visite de certains lieux ou qui n'ont pas permis accès pour que vous posiez des questions aux employés. Est-ce que vous avez rencontré des problèmes de cette nature? Et si oui, qu'avez-vous fait pour régler ces questions opérationnelles pour que votre rapport de vérification puisse être très, très fluide? Merci de la question. La réponse courte, c'est qu'il n'y a pas eu d'obstacle. Le contrôle, la surveillance, comme je l'ai dit plus tôt, était de portée très vaste en 2020 et le niveau de collaboration a été bon de la part de toutes les parties en cause. Et nous avons tous subi les répercussions de la COVID-19, mais on a trouvé le moyen de travailler autour quand même grâce à la technologie comme on le fait maintenant. Et les visites sur le terrain doivent se faire tout en respectant les distances physiques et avec de l'équipement de protection, mais on a réussi à surmonter ces problèmes. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, conseiller. Et maintenant, commissaire Cavana. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voulais poser des questions sur la formation et vous avez dit qu'il y avait beaucoup de formations aussi sur la santé et la sécurité. Est-ce que ce sont des cours qui sont longs? Quelle est la raison pour laquelle les cours n'ont pas pu être suivis plus rapidement? Et est-ce qu'il y a des tests aussi après cette formation? La réponse courte, je dirais d'abord que comme agent de surveillance, je ne fais pas enquête sur les causes de la non-conformité. Et comme je l'ai dit avant, je répète que nous sommes au tout début d'une nouvelle opération. Des employés sont embauchés. Il y a une matrice de formation très vaste qui contient plusieurs cours. Alors oui, il y a des tests sur les cours qui ont été pris, mais je ne veux pas spéculer sur les raisons pour lesquelles tous les cours n'ont pas été offerts. Mais il ne faut pas oublier que dans une perspective à long terme, tous ces cours sont obligatoires. C'est ce qu'Alstom veut et RTM aussi, et la ville aussi, je crois. Mais là encore, quel est l'ordre des priorités pour mettre les employés à niveau? Parfois, il y en a qui apprennent sur le tas. Moi, j'ai été impliquée dans plusieurs opérations où il y avait beaucoup de formation, mais il y a toujours un élément qui se fait en salle de classe, un élément sur le terrain, puis un élément d'apprentissage sur le tas. Alors, moi, je pense qu'il faudrait que ce soit un peu plus formalisé et qu'on commence avec les cours les plus importants. Alors, est-ce que ça se fait généralement à l'interne, cette formation? Ou est-ce que ce sont des agences externes qui s'en occupent? D'après ce que je comprends, il y a des formateurs qui travaillent pour RTM et Alstom et certains d'entre eux viennent de l'extérieur. Je ne peux pas vous décrire tous leurs formateurs, mais c'est ce que j'ai vu jusqu'à maintenant. Et je me demande si ce n'est pas la raison pour laquelle, si c'est plus compliqué d'obtenir la formation, je me demande si c'est vraiment accessible dans l'ensemble. Oui, d'après ce que j'ai vu, ils ont accès à différents entrepreneurs. Comme je l'ai dit, certains sont à l'interne et je n'aime pas spéculer ici, mais c'est peut-être surtout une question de suivi dans les cours. Mais je reviens à la matrice là, de la formation qui est très vaste. S'il faut que 25 cours soient offerts après une année après que les employés ont été embauchés, il faut identifier lesquels sont essentiels avant qu'on permette à un employé d'être sur le terrain. Et c'est la partie qui manquait. Et c'est la partie qui a été éclaircie maintenant. Et maintenant, donc, on devrait savoir exactement, bon, si vous voyez quelqu'un sur le terrain, lequel de ces cours a été suivi, il faut qu'on le sache. Et oui, et tout cela, c'est nouveau aussi puisque notre système est unique, hein? Ou est-ce que c'est courant pour ce genre d'opération? Eh bien, de toute évidence, l'équipement est très sophistiqué. Ce sont des technologies de pointe. Certains des cours qui sont requis, qui sont offerts, qui sont pris par des employés de RTM et Alstom sont les règles d'opération, par exemple pour la ligne de la Confédération. Et ça, c'est une exigence de la ville. Alors, c'est offert. Et puis, il y a des cours aussi très, très techniques sur les façons d'inspecter les centaines de milliers de composants des voitures et du système caténaire. Et ça, ce sont des cours qui vont de pair avec des documents techniques qui viennent généralement des fabricants de pièces et de Alstom. Et ce sont surtout des mécaniciens qui suivent ces cours. C'est le genre de catégorie d'emploi. Alors, ce sont des cours pour ceux qui travaillent directement sur le terrain. En effet, il y a 3 types d'employés. les techniciens qui font les inspections des voies ferrées, l'entretien. Il y a les inspections des systèmes électriques et du système caténaire. Et on a les techniciens d'entretien des voitures qui font le travail sur les voitures. Alors, ils sont tous à différents endroits à faire quelque chose de différent, mais ils sont tous sur le terrain. Merci. Merci, commissaire. Monsieur Barata, vous dites dans votre rapport qu'il y a des domaines qui sont partiellement conformes et qu'il y a des possibilités d'amélioration, mais vous n'avez pas énuméré de secteurs qui ne sont pas conformes, n'est-ce pas? Mais c'est quelque chose que vous indiqueriez si vous en aviez vu. Exact, Monsieur le Président. Comme j'ai dit, le plus bas niveau de conformité est non conforme et il n'y en avait pas. Merci, j'apprécie beaucoup votre présentation. Alors, la recommandation, c'est que la Commission du transport en commun recommande que le Conseil prenne connaissance du rapport annuel de l'agent de vérification de la conformité réglementaire du train léger, 6 juin, comme le document 1. Est-ce adopté? Adopté. Alors, ce point sera étudié le 14 avril au Conseil.
There's no presentation. We do have one delegation, Carrie Glennis Elliott. Do you see her there, Eric?
Yes, Chair, she should be coming online now.
Okay, thank you. Whenever you're ready, Carrie.
Hi, am I unmuted?
We hear you.
Good. Okay, thank you for letting me speak to this. I had a good look at the business plan. I thought it was very, very interesting. I have a few questions about it. One of the themes that I'm noticing is, well, let me explain. I'm Carrie Glines Elliott from the Ottawa Transit Riders. And one of the things that we have been working on is we've been working to get members of the community to talk about improving public transit in the city of Ottawa. And one of the themes that we've been noticing is a big disconnect between what OC Transpo and the city does and what community members would like to see. So I had a good look at this business plan. There are some very, very interesting things in there. I'm very happy to see, for example, that paratranspo is mentioned. I'd like to see that bumped up as a priority. I like the fact that there's a working group because I think it's very important to be talking about users of para, about what they'd like to see. There are a few things that I would like to see more community involvement in. For example, there's a section there on performance measurement and indicators. And there's not a lot of details in this business plan. But what I would formally like is I would like the city and OC Transpo to consult with community members, with groups like the Ottawa Transit Riders, Healthy Transportation Coalition, Ecology Ottawa, Free Transit Ottawa, about what kind of things matter to transit riders. Because we have a saying in economics that the only things we value are the things we can measure. And so when you're creating performance measurement, if you're only measuring the things that OC Transpo thinks are easy to measure or that OC Transpo is going to do well at, you're not necessarily measuring the most important things. I'd really like to have a meeting, a consultation with transit riders who can say, these are the things that we would like to see measured, and we would like to see them looked at, things like being on time, things like communication, that sort of thing. So that's one of my requests. The second thing I want to talk about is the working group on affordable transit. Our group was one of the groups that called for this at a Transit Commission meeting in, I believe it was November 2019. We said this seemed like a really good idea to have a working group to discuss how to make transit affordable, particularly for low-income residents. Our idea, though, was that it would include City of Ottawa, OC Transpo, and members of the community. And members of the community have been completely shut out of this working group. I'd like to know what the mandate of the working group is. I'd like to know who the members are. I'd like to formally ask, is it possible to have members of the community involved in this working group? And the reason that I'm asking this, is that I'm seeing where people are talking a bit about a democratic deficit in the city of Ottawa, where there's this conflict. What happens is that a small group of people sit around a table and they come up with a proposal without consulting with the people who are actually using the service. And they present the proposal and people from the community say, no, that's not what we want. No, we're not happy with this. And then people on the Transit Commission get angry and get defensive and they say, these people aren't happy. And I think, you know, there's a better way of doing this. There's definitely a better way of doing this. We could start with consultations from the very beginning, where people who ride transit and have interest in the community say, this is what we want, and OC Transpo and the city work with us to make these things work. So that's really what I would like to see. So the two things that I'm really asking about are, can we have some input into the performance measurement indicators? And can we have members on the working group? That's all I have to say. I really hope that we get working together, because all of us in this particular meeting want transit to be better. And I think that whatever we do to sort of ratchet down the conflict would be really good. So I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a couple of questions for you, Councillor Meehan.
Actually, Chair, it's not a question for our presenter. It's a question that I would like to ask later on some another topic in this on this item, this agenda item.
Okay, so, well, you had your hand up for the delegate. That's why I called on you. Okay, Commissioner Caricato, please.
Hi, Carrie. Thanks for being here. I'm one of the citizen commissioners on the FAIRS working group. So if you want to meet offline and discuss, I'm happy to make myself available and bring your concerns forward through that mechanism. And we can also discuss performance measurement at the same time if you wish. Just want to put that out there.
Thank you very much for that offer, and I might well take you up on that. I do think, however, that the Transit Commission as a whole would probably function a lot better if it were just a little bit more open to community members. We have a lot of people in the community who are very, very invested in public transit and want a say in the matter. They can't necessarily be elected officials, and they don't necessarily work for OC Transpo. So I would like an opportunity other than the once a month Transit Commission meetings where we sign up as delegates and simply have 5 minutes to speak. I would like a bit more of an opportunity for members of the community to be involved very early on in the stage, at the proposal stage and at the consultation stage. But thank you for that offer.
Is that it, Commissioner?
Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Carrie, you're aware we have 4 citizen members as 4 citizen commissioners, right? Okay.
People out of the
Kavanaugh,
whole city,
please.
though.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for coming out and speaking as a transit user. Is there a question that we can put to staff today? Since you're here, we can ask questions to staff while we're here. So is there a opening question that I can ask to them?
Well, yes, there is a question, although I don't think they could answer right off the bat. Regarding performance measurement indicators, I'd like to know what those indicators are, because the business plan simply said there were going to be indicators established. It didn't actually say what those indicators were. So, for example, if you ask transit riders might say, for example, that on-time accurate communication is a really high priority for them. I'm wondering if that's one of the indicators that will be measured. So that's my question would be, what are the indicators and how do they decide what the indicators would be and how they'd be measured?
Okay, thank you very much.
I believe that report was dealt with at the last commission meeting, and there was a list provided of what areas we're looking at doing performance measures. And next up is Councillor Brockington. He may want to speak to that because he also offered some very good suggestions towards those measures. So it's already taken place with the community consultation piece. Riley, Commissioner Brockington, sorry, if you'd like to go ahead.
Chair, you hit the nail right on the head. I just wanted to inform our delegate exactly what you said. At last month's meeting, we had an extensive discussion on our new performance metric system that's going to be used. And if Ms. Elliott, I'm sure Ms. Elliott would like a copy of that. If OC Transpo can provide her with a summary, I think that would help her.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brockington. Next up is Councillor McKenney.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for coming out, Carrie. It's always good to see you. I certainly don't disagree with you that having more members of the public on any working group. I sit on two right now. I'm sitting on another one, actually, that Councillor Eglai is chairing, and having members of the public who have a certain expertise, insight, is invaluable, really. So it is something that I'll commit to raising. I think that there still can be a way where we can pull in user groups, people who use transit regularly, frequently. That's the way they get around to ensure that, you know, the direction that we're headed in as a working group is certainly in line with what's required from the public. So thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. We do miss these things. I have to admit to that. The working group came out. I was very pleased to be asked to sit on it. You know, it has been approved by commission, by council. We've gone through that. But I don't think things need to be set in stone, and it is something I'll commit to raising. So thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Councillor. So that's the end. Thank you, Carrie, for your delegation. It's appreciated. So we'll now turn to questions of staff from commission members first, and then any councillors joining us. Commissioner Wright Gilbert.
Twice in one meeting, I get to go first. Must be the luck of the Irish. I only have one question. So on page 6 of the business plan and reporting, it talks about paratransport online services. I'm wondering, it lays out what staff is actually going to deliver in 2021. I'm just wondering if we can get a little bit more specificity with respect to the full suite of online booking systems and when, and enhanced functionality for paratransport. When is that going to be available to our paratransport customers?
I'll ask Mr. Scrimgeour to update us.
Thanks.
Thanks, John. Yes, Mr. Chair, we've been testing the, so first of all, the online ability to book or cancel a trip has been in place for a little over a year now. We introduced it initially as a web form until we could get the full suite of online services working. That full set has been in testing with a group of customers since late last year. And we've been getting a lot of value out of that testing, a lot of internal testing as well, upgrading the core software in which this all runs. The 4 main parts of that are going to be the ability to book a trip, including some, not just putting in a request, but getting some live feedback that there will be, you are confirming a trip at that time, the ability to cancel a trip if you no longer have to make that trip, the ability to track the vehicle that's assigned to bring you, to pick you up and take you to your destination, and the ability to manage your account with Paratranspo. And we're getting closer, and I think we'll be able to brief the commission within the next 2 or 3 months on a start date of all those services.
So from this, and thank you for the information, Mr. Scrimgeour. As always, it's helpful to have a little bit more context. So from the sounds of it, if you're briefing the commission in the next 2 or 3 months in terms of a start date, we're likely not looking at a start date of the full suite of online booking systems and enhanced functionality until at least summer, late summer of this year, perhaps fall. Would that be a fair assumption?
We're optimistic that we'll be much sooner than that.
Okay. All right. It's just I've had several questions from para customers that reached out to me about when this full suite of programs is going to be available, or services is going to be available, and I want to be able to provide them with instead of an actual date. So I look forward to hearing more about when para customers can expect this full suite of systems. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my question.
Thank you. Next up is Commissioner Caricato, please.
Thank you. I like the plan. I like what I'm reading in here. I would appreciate a bit more detail, out of curiosity, I guess, about the marketing and advertising to build ridership. And if you can today sort of outline what that looks like in broad terms.
So if we step back pre-COVID, there was always a strong thought that we needed to launch the rail line and then go very, very aggressively on marketing and advertising to continue to build on what was then, very good ridership. COVID has reinforced that even more so. And we want to do some aggressive, and I don't like the term marketing and advertising, but that's what it is. But some what's going to drive the ridership back in whatever form it comes back in. We need some key decisions made so that we can shape that. We need to know what the federal government is doing, the timing on that. We need to know what the universities are doing on that. Because without that line of sight, and I don't have line of sight, we keep asking, we don't know exactly when they're coming and things keep shifting with the vaccination and so forth. We can't really build a construct on that, but this is about doing what many councillors and commissioners talked about during, the launch of the LRT line and post-launch and so forth. It's all of that. I think what COVID has brought to the table is this is going to be a new way of doing this. It's, the conventional marketing and advertising campaign won't just work. It's got to be much more than that. It's got to layer in that layer of cleanliness. It's got to layer in that layer of intercommute. It's got to layer in a whole bunch of things around special events. We used to have massive uptake on the special events programs. We want to drive those customers back into the system and so forth. So it's multifaceted. And there are a lot of variables, Commissioner, and there's going to be some deep thinking we're going to need to think to do on that and step outside the box.
Yeah, I think highlighting the service reliability that we're consistently seeing now would be a good start, since that's sort of where we left off pre-COVID. But looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. On page 16 at the very top, the first sentence kind of caught me off guard. This is about, I guess, the on-demand transit that we're learning about. And it says, as a condition of provincial funding to replace lost fare revenue resulting from the pandemic, the city is required to evaluate the applicability of microtransit in the OC Transpo system. So because this is the first I've heard of conditions, I guess, coming from the province concerning transit funding, are there other conditions that the province is requiring?
There's full auditing requirements, but on the microtransit piece, I know Councillor Meehan has been sharing her thoughts on that, and we're aligned to that. We are totally open to that. We have for years. Microtransit is getting a lot of attention now because there's a lot of vendors that know about this clause on the funding. And where our head's at is absolutely there's a space for that. First mile, last mile is where we need to go when we go, recover our ridership and so forth. And so, I just caution it all looks new. It's there's new packaging around it. There's some great innovation that's occurring out there, but we are, just to be clear, we're totally on for it. And we were studying it even before it became a condition of this piece. And there is a space for this in our network. You're one of the largest geographical cities that you serve transit on. And, Councillor Meehan, absolutely, first mile, last mile. We don't have to be everything to everybody. And so it'll be there. But Commissioner Caricato, this is a condition of the provincial funding. And then the rest are pretty generic in terms of auditing, and it shall only be used for COVID measures and so forth and things like that.
Okay, thanks. Next question is about GPS tracking. It was mentioned once, I think, on page 17, but I was hoping I'd see more of that in the business plan for the year ahead. Can you speak about GPS tracking, where we're at, where we're going this year?
Certainly. I'm going to turn over to Pat. And the one thing Pat does, he's a humble leader. He doesn't brag enough. His mission is crystal clear. I told him coming out of COVID, just like on our fare payment system, the expectations of the customers is totally different than pre-COVID. Just like your shopping experience has changed. So this space, Councillor Kavanaugh has been pushing hard. The chair has been pushing hard. You have, Commissioner. Pat's mission is come out of COVID, where people can track anything, anywhere, and that's what he's pushing hard on. And he's doing some great work in this space. Pat, could you comment on this?
Sure. GPS. We have GPS tracking on all of our all of our rubber-tired vehicles, paratranspo buses, and full-size buses. Trains are tracked through the CBTC control system. So that tracking is available to our control staff, and it's available for any emergency response required. We also use that GPS tracking as an input to the next stop predictions that we publish that are picked up by many apps and published. And we talked probably, I think it was last commission meeting, about the new API that we've got, the next version of it that is capable of feeding more robust, more precise information out to those apps. And what's coming soon is introducing our new central dispatch system, which is replacing a life expired system. The new one that comes does better predictions, more robust, more solid predictions, especially towards the beginning of routes. And that the new API, the API 2.0, allows us, we have to clear that obstacle with all of the app developers before we can introduce the new control system and publish better data to them. So it's a little better right now. It's just a little more stable, but within the next few months, that better data comes from the control system. But I want to reinforce that's not about GPS tracking. That's about prediction of the vehicle arrival time at the stop where a customer's waiting.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think we can all recall of situations where we're waiting for a bus. I've experienced it. I know others have too, where you see the bus on your app and it's coming, it says 2 minutes away, and then all of a sudden it disappears and you're back to, 14 minutes. And so if we can improve that, and it sounds like we're working towards that, then I'm happy. Next question, I guess, is one that I've brought up before. It relates to number 8 on the plan, O-Train Line 1 station improvements. Electronic signage outside of O-Train stations. Is that something we're continuing to look into?
Yeah, we're continuing to do. We've got the first signs at the entrances of stations going up at Rideau Station within the next little while, and we'll be continuing to roll those out. It wasn't possible to incorporate that work into the main contract with RTG because of the nature of how that construction was being done, so it's all being done as a retrofit. But the footings are in. If you go by the east entrance to Rideau Station, you can see the footings now, and the signs will be in soon. Now that the weather's getting better, it'll be easier to do that work.
So when you're approaching Tunney's pasture, for example, you'll be able to see the next train is in 3 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, but it won't be that long. But yeah, before you get down and pay your fare and make the decision to go in the station.
That's right. And, one of the big things that we'll be doing is if there is any modification of service or any disruption to service, it'll be displayed on that screen, just as it is displayed right now on the screens that are inside the stations. We'll be able to display it on the screen outside the station so that a customer who is walking to the station but isn't checking Twitter has another way of being aware.
Great. And when can we expect all stations to have electronic signage outside?
I don't have a date for that yet. It's going to be an ongoing piece of work.
Okay, thanks so much. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up is Vice Chair Kluche, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for this report. I have more of perhaps less of a question, but more of a comment for your consideration. The Keeping You Safe campaign was launched as a result of COVID and is targeted to those who are already on transit. And page 8 of this report speaks about the business plan to install the installation of 1,200 signs in stations, 700 on trains, 5,100 signs on buses, and on signs on paratranspo minibuses. Those who are seeing those ads are indeed our transit, they are on our transit system, and important to keep them informed. But in the coming months, as we enter the post-COVID environment, I'd like to hear from our comms team how we would encourage people, how we can pivot that messaging to a wider community and welcome transit riders back to public transit, and welcoming them back, perhaps using the Keeping You Safe or safer key messages. But to do this, we should explore other communication channels that are outside our transit to reach those who are not currently on transit. So I'd just like your thoughts, your comments, and your assurance that we will be reaching outside of our system to welcome people back on transit.
Vice Chair, absolutely, and that speaks to the earlier question about advertising and promotion. You know, I think we can all attest that it's information overload right now to people. The facts are 3 worldwide studies that transit is not a transmitter of COVID. That's been scientifically proven over and over. We're going to take all that as part of that, return the ridership people back. It's a question of timing. You know, I look to Dr. Etches, who's been a great partner and a great advisor at weaving that piece in. She's been so supportive of what we've done. And I think to your point, exactly, it's got to go outside the normal channels that we use.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. That's all my questions and comments.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So next up is Councillor Brockington, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks to staff for putting this together, both giving us an update on the 2020 plan and their vision for 2021. Previous comments about paratranspo from 2020, in that report on page 6, you talk about what you'd like to do in 2021, particularly the delivery of the full suite of the online booking system and enhanced functionality of for paratranspo customers. Is this not identified as a 2021 main project because it's a carryover from 2020 and you're just continuing with that work?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And again, this is a compliment to Pat. He doesn't brag enough. He's doing some amazing stuff with the paratranspo group. He's got a bunch of updates coming to you via memo and so forth. So yes, Commissioner, the para working group is doing great work, and then the day-to-day group, customer service group, has been doing some great outreach with customers.
Okay, I didn't want para riders or advocates to assume that we're not making this an equal priority, that it's not losing any steam. It sounds like there's great work going on. So I just wanted to reinforce that with them. I think whether we make it a priority or not, you're still going to put exactly the same effort into it to getting this done. So your response today provides me comfort, and I won't be amending anything in that regard. I just wanted to comment, Chair, about item 5, which is the performance measurement and reporting system, which we endorsed just a month ago. I just want to reinforce that Mr. Scrimgeour acknowledged that this was sort of our first attempt to identify performance measurement. We will have an opportunity, perhaps in 1 year's time, to reflect on the variables, and there may be an opportunity to revise them. So I just want to leave the door open that once we start to get data and we start to better understand the metrics that are in place, and we look at that we may want to tweak it. So I just want to leave that door open later in this year. And finally, for 2021, again, I'm fine with the plan that's been proposed. I do have a few questions. One is regarding the bus barriers that were ultimately approved by council late in the year. Mr. Manconi, I'm a little hesitant with going to a sole source contract, although I sense your urgency to get this done, and certainly our employees, representatives want to see this done as quickly as possible as well. Have we used our time well since council made the decision in December to get this up and running?
Excellent timing. I just got an update from Mr. Greer yesterday. I believe he's tracking to end of summer to get things done, and he worked with Will McDonald, our Chief Procurement Officer, who's here for the other report. They basically went and negotiated with our bus suppliers. So we didn't go sole source per se. We went with the Nova Bus and with the New Flyer bus companies, and got some very good pricing, and more importantly, an accelerated timeline. So that's Jim, I think I've got it right. I think you said yesterday, end of summer is kind of what you're tracking to in terms of having the entire fleet done, and it comes off in increments of 20 or so on a regular cycle. So they've got an acceleration plan.
And all within budget.
Mr. Greer is under budget right now, and Mr. Greer watches the bottom line very, very well. I think he will come in under or at budget, worst case scenario, but right now it's tracking to under budget.
Okay, good. Mr. Manconi, can you talk about the bus system overall? And I'll give you some context. After the LRT line opened, we had a challenging winter, not just because of the challenges on the Confederation line, but the bus service in particular was very challenged for reliability. And maybe a lot of that was due to the scarcity of drivers that you had and the challenges to fill holes. My concern is this, that when our transit service returns to, let's just say, normal capacity, it needs to run smoothly. We can't go back to the challenges that we had pre-COVID. I'm confident the LRT line will be obviously much stronger. The reliability now is performing well, but what assurances can you give the Transit Commission that the challenges we were having with the bus system as recently as a year ago will have been addressed and much better service when we get our numbers back?
No, it's an important question. So if we go back when we launched, we had that great September, no rail issues, and then things got very challenging. And you remember we did two things. We launched a train system and we redid your entire bus route system. So 1,000 buses, 190 routes. That's important to put it in perspective. 350,000 people a day is what you're moving. And you recall, they were constantly pulling buses off to do the R1 because there were so many interruptions. So number one, you've seen the metrics. We haven't done an R1 saving except the other day for a short period of time in a long, long time. So that's increased reliability. But the other thing is you added 40 buses as floaters because we were drawing capacity to do some tweak. That 40 is not in your base budget right now. That was part of the solutions we brought forward to you. But we're confident that the 190 routes are stable, that they're robust, that the reliability, if it stays at that 98%, they all go together as an integral piece. But there's things that we need to watch for. Return of ridership will come with many different elements. Some people, there's already surveys out there. Some people are going to wait a long time before they jump on a public transit vehicle. That may increase your street traffic, which may cause congestion issues. So I can never sit here and say 100%, but we were doing very well when we did those extra 40 buses. High 90s in terms of percentage of service out. Our workforce, we've used this time to staff up. We're at a good staff complement, a good spare board complement, hence my reluctance to do deep cuts. Now we've got service adjustments coming to you as you've requested. So that's coming forward soon. And vaccine keeps changing and so forth. So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle, but it was running well before COVID struck. And our mission is to do exactly what you're suggesting, Councillor Brockington.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. My last question is the upgrades to some of the LRT stations. Item 8, you've noted Blair and Tunney's Pasture in particular. Can you just talk about Herdman Station and the upgrades you've already done, like there's covered walkway that leads from the main station westbound to all the bus stops. Is there anything planned to upgrade the actual LRT station to better protect passengers from the elements?
40 seconds left.
At LRT, Councillor? At Herdman, sorry?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's no immediate plans to modify the station. I know you've talked about winds and so forth there. That's one of the stations that's elevated there. You know, as development occurs around there, I think things will improve, but there's no immediate plans to do any retrofits to that station.
Okay, it's the north-facing staircase that's completely exposed, and the concern was to have snow, ice on the stairs while people were traveling up and down.
Yes.
Again, I'm not going to amend the plan, but I just want to say that is still a matter that a number of my residents who use Herdman Station raised with me. Chair, I will be supporting the recommendation for the 2021 work plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. That's much appreciated. Next up is Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that the issue was raised about GPS. I think that's really, really important. And Mr. Scrimger and I have talked before the meeting as well. So look forward to it. Hope to have some dates of when it'll get started. So when we can have that information, I'll be very happy. The other things I want to talk about is just transit fare in general. I guess we have to be really open-minded in terms of wooing people back, and it won't be what it looked like before. Have we thought about making other kinds of arrangements? Like, you know, people aren't going to travel every single day. They're not likely to buy monthly passes anymore. What are we looking at in terms of other options to get people back into ridership? Because it's going to be different. As you said, Mr. Manconi, they're going to, you know, just take their time, and maybe they'll go once or twice a week. What can we do to? Is there something that's being looked at in that respect?
Two things there, Councillor Kavanaugh. The first goes back to Commissioner Cadocato's question about, you know, what's that marketing and advertising campaign look like? Whether or not council wants to look at fare offsets and so forth, that we need direction from council on that as part of that work. The one thing we are doing is, again, I want to go back to our fare payment system, and that's why, you know, I like to brag a lot about it, because it's one of the best out there. And one of the things it's going to enable you to do is do some fare capping functionality down the road if you want to do that. Better initiatives on multi-passes and so forth. Pay any way you want. The message on our fare system is going to be, there's no wrong door. You can pay any way you want, and then there's flexibility down the road if there's a fare policy discussion that people want to have, or that council wants to have in that regard. So flexibility is the key.
Yeah, definitely. And we heard from a member of Transit Rider Group about being involved. Is it possible to bring in some of these groups in terms of consulting with them?
Councillor, the short answer is we'll meet with anyone, and you know, we've met with many of the speakers that we've heard, including the one today. The challenge, I'm going to be candid here with Commission, is number one, we have zero capacity to add any more projects. I'm being candid with that. In the city, I have the full city manager's support. We had lengthy discussions. We've just been through a worldwide pandemic. I'm proud, you know, this team doesn't brag enough. They've delivered on every single thing in 2020, and we've got a very aggressive plan for 2021, and we kept service running. The issue where we get frustrated is I can't sit in a room and have for example, a no fare policy discussion. That is not our place. That is your place. And I think we as staff are frustrating some of the speakers that come and say, well, you know, for example, you should go to no fares. And my short answer is that's not our mandate. Council has given us a mandate, and the fares are the fares. And so we will meet with anyone. And, you know, when people come to this commission, my door is wide open. As you know, I've met with many people, and will continue. but I also deliver. You're the bosses. We're not the bosses. We're here to execute on your plans. And I think we're frustrating them. I'm just being candid with you on that. We'll meet with anybody. I don't think we need massive meetings, but we're here to help people out. We want riders to be content and satisfied and safe and all those things. But on some of the asks, we're handcuffed, and I have no capacity. This team is exhausted to add more to the work plan. I'm being candid with you, Councillor Kavanaugh, as I know I can. Yep, you can. We've lost millions of dollars. People aren't riding the buses. So we're going to continue to lose millions if we don't move them back to some extent. But so price point does make a difference. Price point, to if you're going to try and get someone back, I think it would be a good idea to look at. I sure hope the transit group looks at that. I also want to ask about gender lens. If that is being looked at as well when we talk about the transit group and who our customers are and what we're doing for them. 100%, Councillor. Every one of these, we've adopted the equity inclusion lens many years ago, and it is applied to every single project on all these initiatives. Thank you. One of the things I would encourage is help for those who travel with children. I know that that's something I've heard. Is when people are trying to use bus service and their families, and I think I'd like to see more families using the bus service. If we could make some arrangements for families, i.e. make it so that you bring you're paying for everyone, and it's a better arrangement. So you're encouraging people to take transit with their kids to take them places. I know Councillor Brockington has done some stuff for special occasions, but I'm hearing from people that would really help them. And I think that it's kind of a gender issue too, in terms of helping people get to childcare and schools and things like that. So I hope we'll consider that, because I hear that as something that would be helpful. In terms of and working with some of the groups who've raised issues with us, such as Cowie, which we've worked with very closely on gender issues. Has anything been considered in those regards? Yep. Some quick comments come to mind. First and foremost, Pat's implemented the Family Day Pass initiative. Again, the payment system will enable a bunch of options in that regard. One of the things, and I'm hoping on recovery of COVID, tracking ridership, pre-COVID, pre-rail launch, we met with museums, art galleries, and so forth, and we said, hey, be a partner with us and do a family package when you're buying your tickets, build it right into the booking of your online ticket. That was a challenge for many of them because of technology. Now with the rapid deployment of technology, I think there'll be a lot of uptake that when you're booking your a family day at the museum, which got a discounted rate on a certain day, you can buy your OC Transpo family pass at a discounted rate. We're all on for those types of things. And it's not just from those that can afford it, but also for those that are challenged in that regard in terms of other initiatives that we can do. So everything's on the table, Councillor, in terms of attracting our community to transit in every way. And I just want to say, in terms of our current low-income passes, I appreciate that we've not raised them, that we've not allowed them to go up in price, and that's really important, especially right now. I couldn't think of a better time to keep them from being raised, but I appreciate that we do have to look at making it easier for people of low income, because I hear concerns about filling out paperwork and just having access to it and figuring out what kind of pass they can have. These are all things that are another barrier for them getting on and using transit. So I hope that something's being done on that end. I saw that was part of what has been reported, but and what your comments. So I think that is a big deal in terms of the paperwork that is required to get these passes. We need to get away from that. So I appreciate looking at that. I'm interested in the micro
transit. I think I have a lot of questions on it. My concern is how that affects our employees right now. Like I just don't want to go to an Uber style where we have two classes of employees. That concerns me. If we even considered that. So we have a very good system, good transit union. And so that's one of the things that I'd like to know about is how such a
20 seconds left.
So, Councillor, you're absolutely right. Microtransit is not a contracting out of our transit services. I'll say that flat out. It's not a substitute for the great bus systems you have. You know, with the utmost respect of the agency that's talking about microtransits, I'll put it all in perspective. They have 10 routes, you have 190 routes. They got 16 vehicles, you have 900 vehicles. They have 4,200 passengers a day. You have 350,000 passengers a day. And they had some bus routes that they just simply didn't have the ridership on. And yes, they went to an on-demand service. You used to have one years ago. It was called Dial Bus, by the way. Those of you that remember it, served parts of Nepean, parts of Orleans, and so forth. And it was, you know, smaller buses that would come out and pick you up. You've grown beyond that. Now, where does microtransit fit into your space? If you want to see where it's working well, go to Denver. Last mile, first mile. They've done partnerships where if you're trying to get to the nearest transfer station and you've got 2 kilometers or 2 miles that you don't want to walk or bike to, you can hook up with Uber or whoever you want and get there. And they have microtransit firms that will serve you and get you there. But to be clear, Councillor Cavan, I'm exactly with you. This is not about outsourcing OC Transpo. It's not about replacing high capacity bus service, which is what you run here in the nation's capital, highest ridership per capita in North America, but it has a place. And we will bring back to you those concepts, but it's not a substitute for conventional bus service. And it's not that we're opposed to it. And the union has spoken out. I don't blame them because they, you know, it could feel like we're going to outsource their jobs. That's not what this is about. It's to augment. And what you have done as a council, you've got the best MUP system being built with LRT. You've invested in massive cycling infrastructure at the LRT stations. You permit them on your trains. You promote walking, cycling, segregated bike lanes. This is another piece to getting people to those stations and to using a multimodal journey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Up next is Councillor McKenney.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. One, just on the microtransit, I also have concerns that I will be watching very closely. Mine relate to two-tier customers. You know, if part of our system becomes, you know, in any way privatized or changed, that people, we know that we have two types of riders. We have riders who take the bus because best way for them to move about, to get to work. And then we have others who have absolutely no other option. And for those, the system can't become, you know, they can't become more disadvantaged in this system. So I will be watching for that. That's all I'm going to say for now. But at this point, it's not something that I support. I've been, I think, pretty clear about that. My question is on, I see that in your business plan, which is a very good one, thank you. Number 9, rail simulator upgrades. I just noted that you'll be working to ensure that the simulator is an exact representation of both expanded rail lines, so stage 1 and stage 2. And I just wonder what the status is then of the training simulators today on stage 2. I don't recall if that was talked about in any detail at the FEDCO meeting when we got our update.
Yeah, no, Councillor, this is the part that reports to this committee. So we in our, I can't recall if you came for the tour. I know many of you tried out the simulators. If you go to our training facility now, you can drive the electric train, which is the Confederation line. You can drive the diesel train, the old ones that we had, which we're going to keep as part of the airport spur. You can drive buses and para vehicles. And so this upgrade gets the new Stadler vehicles, which is the diesel line, and any modifications that are done to the Alstom trains, which are would only be minor and cosmetic in nature. So they do the fit ups for the Stadler vehicle for stage 2, because stage 2 on the diesel line, you're running Stadler vehicles and also the Alstom vehicles.
And are we are they on time right now? Like for the Stadler vehicles, like will that hold up anything? We know that there's a delay. And is there a delay on the simulator for line 2?
So the simulator, I'll answer the simulator part because that's not part of FEDCO. The simulator does not come from Stadler, so it's not part of the stage 2 construction contract. This comes from a software supplier called Octel. So it's not linked to the vehicle build out of stage 2 construction. This is it's software upgrades, screens, and they do a CAD mock-up and so forth.
So am I to take from that you're not going to tell us whether it's on time or not? I have to wait.
The simulator is perfectly on time. There's no issues with the simulator.
There's none on line 2, so that's not holding up line 1 in any way. That's not holding up this objective number 9 in your business plan.
No, the simulator is on time. It's been planned out. It's being managed by the chief safety officer. You secured the funds. It's all moving. And Octel is our supplier. They know that they built that first one, so they're right in there. They know the whole configuration.
Okay.
Again, Councilor, if you want to come over, I'll show you. I'll walk you through it, and I'll show you what's involved anytime.
Okay. No, that's no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll let you drive the train too.
Okay, I will come.
Anybody's welcome. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up is Councillor Mia.
Hi, thank you very much, Chair, and hi, everybody. Before I ask my question, I just want to clarify and hopefully allay fears of my council colleagues and the transit union, ATU, that what I have been calling for is not microtransit. I do not agree with microtransit, but I do like to propose macro transit. And it's a lot different than microtransit. So just bear that in mind as I ask my question, okay? And I'll explain it later if I have to. But I want to say in my recent communications with Mr. Manconi and Mr. Scrimshire, I learned that OC Transpo Management had been in contact with at least one technology company about on-demand transit options. And I was gratified to learn that now that it's a directive from the provincial government's Safe Restart Funding Program funding agreement. And I also welcome Mr. Manconi's comments this morning that there certainly is room for that within our city. I have since learned, since that conversation, that one technology company has offered to implement a small pilot project in Ottawa for a nominal amount to showcase the capabilities of a macro transit using app that would use our buses and our operators in designated areas. So that offer has been made to Ottawa. And this company is suggesting that a pilot project could be tested in a suburban area, either on evenings or on weekends. They just require some ridership data from Ottawa, which they are unable to get from our managers. I spoke to a company spokesperson just this morning, and they tell me they have been unable to connect with Mr. Scrimshire or anyone in transit planning since before Christmas. Their calls are just not being returned. So my question is, why has OC Transpo not responded to this very generous offer of a pilot project here in Ottawa to see how this could possibly work in our city? Other Canadian cities, and I know specifically Brampton, Hamilton, and Mississauga have all called for RFPs for on-demand macro transit. Again, using our buses and our operators changing nothing about that, but putting a service in that could be more cost efficient here in Ottawa. So I want to know, like, what's the problem here?
Councillor, respectfully, there's no problem. I've talked to many of these companies, as is Mr. Scrimger, and the phone is ringing off the hook since the announcement that the province made. And it's even ringing more now that you've made your comments, which again, I have no concerns with those. But a couple of things. They all want your data. They all will come in and do a pilot for you. There is staff capacity that we need to do. We need to do this well. They paint this rosy picture that they can come in and it's plug and play. It's not plug and play. And I can assure you, I'm sure you don't want me to just randomly pick any neighborhood. You want us to put together a plan. We want to put the equity inclusion lens. I don't arbitrarily just go pick a route. I'd have to write a report back to this commission and so forth. So I don't know who the company is that's saying that we're not returning calls. We've returned many, many calls. We've had meetings, and respectfully to the vendors, it's not complicated to understand, but we work for you. We don't work for the vendors. And they're all saying that they can do things literally and turn around on a dime. Well, we are in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. We are dealing with a very aggressive work plan that you've endorsed last year. It was not on our work plan. And there isn't capacity to just start meeting with random vendors, hearing how they can plug and play. Mr. Scrimger met with one vendor twice who had the exact same message to me, which, by the way, they said nominal cost. I said, do it for free. But once they met with Mr. Scrimger, he quickly explained to them, they can't do what they thought they could do.
So have we had an offer though for a company to give us a small pilot project to see if this would work?
We've had companies that want to come in and do stuff for us.
A pilot project specifically, Mr. Manconi?
They basically say, we'll come in and do whatever you'd like us to do. That's okay. Their message.
And how close are we to taking up what a company offer on this?
We're not.
Why not?
Because we've put it on our work plan. That's what big organizations do. We table a work plan with our board of governors, yourselves, and it's part of our condition of funding. We have to do it. We will do it, and we will bring it to you. Now, if you want to give me a motion that says go do a pilot on a micro or macro transit or whatever terminology they choose to use, tell me where you'd like me to do it, what routes, what neighborhood, and what project comes off the list, because I can't do it right now. I have to bring to you the framework to do it and do it well.
I can understand that, but if you have a company that just needs some, say, ridership numbers from the suburbs, that we could, why wouldn't we just jump on this? Because we're losing so much money on running these empty buses right now. If we could run our buses with more people in them to where these people really want to go, it would increase ridership, increase fares, increase efficiency. Why would we not take a company up at this point just to figure out how this could possibly work for us? This is the time we have to do it. And it's the perfect time to do it, to recreate our transit system. Yes, keep our fixed routes, keep our fixed buses, our fixed operators, but add to it, complement it with a different way to run our buses through community. I realize that it takes time, but I think, can we not maybe get a dedicated, a few dedicated people to work with even one company now? And I'm not proposing any particular company, but the technology exists now that someone could go to a bus stop, order a bus, and the bus can show up, within 5, 10, 15 minutes and get them exactly where they want to go. It exists, and it's not going to affect our drivers, and it's not going to affect our buses. Why can't we do that? Make it a priority right now, because it's going to save us money and increase efficiency.
Councillor, we've met with 6 companies. There's a 7th booked. Nobody's given us a formal proposal.
I'm going to send you then the information that I received this morning from one particular company that proposes this, and they have not been heard from. They haven't heard back from OC Transpo.
Happy to meet with them when we have time, but in terms of what you're asking for, my answer is move a motion to give us direction on what neighborhood, what route, and by when, and then we'll take something off the work list to get it done.
Can I move a motion that does that today and without identifying a specific route, but we work with a company to identify that route given our ridership numbers?
So you would like me to sole source with a company?
No, I would like to, if we could get it done for a small pilot project for a specific time that doesn't cost us anything, can we not do that? That does not commit us to actually signing a long-term contract with the company, but it gives us an idea of how this can work for us and maybe allay fears in the community and with the ATU.
Time.
Chair, if that is the direction of this committee, take something off the work list, because we've given to you what we can do. And again, I have the full support of the city manager that we are maxed out on resources right now. We're dealing with a worldwide pandemic, including recovery, and including we're bringing you the service adjustments and framework for further service cuts. I do not have the dedicated one, and it's not one person. I can assure you it's more than one person. And it is, Councillor McKenney talked about equity. Councillor Kavanaugh talked about equity and inclusion. We got labor relations issues. We've got policies. You've got rules in terms of transit providers. There's a legal framework that you need to review. It's not just myself. The legal team will need to be engaged, and procurement in terms of how we're going to sole source this. So I'm in your hands, Chair.
I would just
Thank
suggest.
you. Sorry, Councillor Meehan. He's asked me a question. We have a question to the chair from the staff, so if you don't mind. We're not going to do this as a direction today. As Mr. Manconi pointed out, what you're asking for is a sole source contract. So what I encourage you to do is we will work going forward with you on that. First, I saw your request was reading it in the paper today. Your earlier mention to it, you were comparing us to a town that has 12 buses. So we got to get a little more information here on what exactly would be involved. We need to bring procurement in, as Mr. Manconi mentioned, legal. It's not just snap your fingers and shut down routes in your community, for example, and turn you over the next day to a new app. There's some work that has to go into this. I agree that we need to continue to look at this option. In the months ahead, there's reports coming back to the commission on how we can make some changes and adjustments to the service going forward. But they're not going to be done on the spur of the moment. We're going to have a discussion here at the commission. We have to allow public input into that discussion at the commission meetings as well. And then staff will be directed to go. Hopefully, some of the workload that Mr. Manconi and the others have on their plate right now will be reduced so that we can take on more projects. But I would not be supportive of giving a direction to staff today to do this and then rework the work plan to find the resources. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair. But I would just say that anything that we can do right now to increase our loss of fare revenue and increase efficiency should be a priority on our work plan. So, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And trust me, that is the priority of staff and the commission. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to come back, and I will be brief. Mr. Manconi, can you talk about funding that transit authorities are receiving from upper levels of government in 2021? Recent announcements, my understanding, are exclusively for capital projects, capital initiatives. Is there any new funding coming in 2021 for operating?
Commissioner, I was just looking to see if Wendy was on, if the treasurer was on this call. I don't believe she is. She's pulling all that together and is going to be kind of giving us a scorecard on where we are. I don't have that for you today. She's tied in with the treasurers groups, and she gets literally every day updates on those pieces. So I don't have that answer for you today, but I will talk to the treasurer and get a timeline on when she's reporting back on that.
Thank you. Just micro transit, I don't want to belabor this issue. You talked about earlier on the possibility of augmenting service in your mind, micro transit. I think that can be a benefit of it, but I'm concerned that the provincial government's main focus of microtransit is to reduce overall costs. Do you get that feeling that that's where they want us to go?
I think they want to look at, like all of us, we're concerned about costs, right? Not just for ourselves, but our future generations. And if there's ways to do this at a lower cost, you've all spoken to me about pockets of your community that doesn't meet warrants for a bus route, but how do we get people, again, back to that first mile, last mile? So I think it's in that space. What I point to is it looks like it's new. It's not new. It's been tried. It's been failed many times in other communities, by the way. But there's other initiatives out there. There's Build a Route software that's used for longer commutes, where the public agency is the provider, and you get a string of neighbors to justify a bus being deployed. It's all in real time. We're going to put all of that on the table. I mean, I say it over and over again, Pat's one of the best in Canada on this stuff, and I'm plugged in around the world. I think with technology, you're going to see a bunch of space opening up where you can do what we've talked about. And it's not about privatization. It's not about a two-tier system. It's about an inclusive, well-run transit system that meets the needs of everyone with the proper lenses applied to it: economic, social, equity, inclusion, caring, inclusive, safe, all those things. That's what we're going to bring back to you in terms of the space that we like to be in.
Okay. We've talked about microtransit. What's your understanding of what macro transit is?
There are so many terminologies being thrown out there right now. What it points to is, let's be candid, the private sector wants to be in this space. The mobility space is $1 trillion industry around the world, multi-trillion-dollar industry. And they found they want to be in this space. And to Councillor McKenney's point, you got to be very careful. What is the mandate of public transit? It's not to make money. You're at 50% fare box recovery. It's to provide an all-inclusive mobility system for everyone across the city. And so again, back to principles. And I'm not saying what Belleville did is right or wrong. They had a gap, they filled it. But you're at a different scale. You're a different pace and construct. We just want to do it right. But don't kid yourself. The private sector is chasing the bottom line here. They see a need and they're filling the need. Is it right or wrong? That's for you to decide as the Board of Governors if you want that space.
But does macro, I know what micro and macro mean, but does macro in the context of public transit just mean you have competitors offering a similar service? Right now, we have Uber, we have Lyft, people can take the e-scooters, they can drive their own vehicle. What do you consider macro transit is, just for us to have a good understanding?
Pat, do you want to kind of give a quick sense of all the flavors that are out there right now, please?
So a private thought I've had, which is a little bit, it's not meant to be dismissive, but the definition of microtransit, from each company that approaches us, is very closely aligned to the service that company offers. The companies are offering different services, and their definition of microtransit is whatever they promote, whatever they offer, whatever their services or their software provide. What's key to it all, what's common to it all, is the idea that the transit vehicle responds on demand or in a way that is shaped by the demand when people actually take a specific action, whether it's by pressing a button on an app, calling into a call center, or talking to the driver on a bus at a major terminal, that there's a behind the scenes system that matches those trip requests into an itinerary that a vehicle can follow to pick people up and to drop people off. That's what's common to all of them. What's varied is what software they're promoting, how it connects in with our core operational software, how it faces out to customers, how it treats customers who don't have cell phones, how it works departing from a common point. what type of vehicle is used, what type of service arrangement there is with the company. And the bigger companies seem to participate in a range of these. So most of the companies we've been talking to, not all, are primarily software or software supported service companies, and they offer their services in some cases where they're providing the software service to support a municipal transit operation. In some cases, they're providing it as a contract to a municipality. In some cases, they're doing it on a cost plus basis where they are actually providing the service. There's a wide range of possibilities. They might not all be applicable in all, they won't all be applicable in all parts of Ottawa. And we have to narrow down what parts are applicable in what parts of Ottawa, where we can find something that is responding to the policy needs of the commission, whether that is extending service, improving service, or providing service at a lower cost. So it's also, you know, we have very high transit ridership, and there's no on-demand service that's ever going to be more efficient when there's a lot of people traveling than a bus going straight up and down a street every few minutes, dropping people on and off. This is all going to be about times of day or areas of the city where ridership is low, or times of this, or new parts of the city as they're built where the travel habit hasn't yet been created. So we're looking at the experience of these companies. We're looking at the experience of the transit agencies. We're talking with Edmonton, Calgary, Regina, Sault Ste. Marie, North Bay, York Region, Belleville. I met with the fellow from Belleville probably coming up on 2-3 years ago as they were starting that demonstration project. And we have to find how it fits into a big city, high ridership system like OC Transpo.
Okay, Pat, I really appreciate that reply. Thank you. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. And then Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Chair. Again, micro, macro, I think it's an important distinction, because one is a private operator, and we don't want to see that. We want to protect our staff and our investment because we have a good system. What we want is a better system that's more responsive. So I'm wondering, I think because we are looking at the way of the future, and we should be embracing it. Is it possible to ask maybe 1 or 2 representatives of some of the companies that are promoting this to us to address a commission meeting so we can ask our own questions?
We can look at putting this on a future agenda, Councillor Meehan. We just got to get staff past the hump that they're in right now, where there's no resources available to it. But we can undertake to look at doing something on this down the road.
Yeah, I think that macro transit is the way. We use our buses, our own operators. And this can quell some of the fear that this idea is eliciting. You know, we are not out to cut jobs. We're out for efficiencies, and the efficiencies can be attained without losing our resources, without losing the people who make our system work. So I just want to impress upon you, that's what I'm talking about. That's, you know, the key to this is the software that it can be used, and it can be used in a city the size of Ottawa, while it's being used it's been tried in smaller cities, Regina, Saskatoon, Stratford, yes, but it's going into big cities like Mississauga, and we should be part of that wave, and the sooner the better, okay? But I can reach out to some of these companies and they can address us and we can ask them the questions before we proceed, but I think we have to proceed, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Meehan. So the recommendation is that the Transit Commission receive the Transit Services 2021 business plan and reporting on the 2020 business plan for information. Is this report received?
Received.
Received.
Steve, thank you. Now, before we go on to the next item, which is number 4, the advertising on the O train line 1, I just want to clarify one thing for the benefit of those that could be watching us online or listening in. The order of the speakers is determined by Zoom. The commission members put their hand up. We go to whoever gets their hand up first. We don't randomly choose who speaks first. And as with the protocol with other standing committee members, we always try to go to the committee members first, and then anybody else, any other counselors that are joining us today, they get to ask their questions after the commission members have asked theirs. So I just want to get that clarified, that it's not a random selection here. So on this item, advertising on O train line 1, there's no presentation. We have no registered speakers. So we can go straight to questions to staff. I believe Commissioner Caricato, you had said at the outset you wanted us to hold the item. So if you want to go first.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's really just to congratulate the great work that staff have done to prepare this report and get ready to roll out advertising on O train line 1 trains and stations. Pat and John, congrats to you and your respective teams. I think it's a good plan. It's one that gets things started now and incrementally works up towards full-fledged of advertising once stage 2 is online. It also gives us a chance to see some revenue coming in. I completely understand that given ridership numbers and the pandemic right now, it's going to be quite low at the beginning, but I'm hopeful, like the rest of our economy, it will bounce up, and that we're going to see significant revenue going forward. It also gives us a chance to work out any kinks while it's low and sort of do any upgrades or station improvements that we need to do. So congratulations. I really like the plan. Just a couple questions though. I guess you mentioned a bit about the gross advertising sales that the city receives. I'm wondering if you have a figure or a number that you can give us about that.
Chair, I'm going to ask Will McDonald to comment on that because there's public reporting out on that on confidentiality. Will, could you please take that question?
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I don't have those figures in front of me, but I would be pleased to follow up with the commissioner.
That's great. Thanks. Maybe all of us would be interested, not just me. So maybe a report through John to the entire commission.
We will work with Will and get you a memo to all members of commission.
Thank you. How long do you think it will take to pursue the extension agreement with Pattison?
Will, I think that'll be a quick exercise.
That would be my understanding as well. We're exercising a term in the existing agreement, and so it's just a matter of negotiating that extension using the existing agreement as the base. Yeah,
so adding the 5-year extension that's allowed to us in the current agreement and including trains and stations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then once that agreement's in place, how quickly do you think we can move forward?
Our signal to them will be, we want to move as quickly as possible. You're interested in this revenue. It's the industry right now is in flux like everything else. And as vaccinations roll out and, you heard about, possible concerts coming and so forth, I think they'll leverage those things as much as possible. So we will move quickly.
Yeah. Okay, great. I guess that was really, so are the trains already fit with framing and in the stations?
Yes, there's frames in the trains, just like the buses. And in the stations, all that space that we use for safety and learning experiences, that will then now turn into advertising space.
Okay, that's great. So by the end of this year or by the fall, when ridership starts to come back, we hope we'll have some ads on our trains. Is that accurate?
If they're ready to go, we will go as quickly as possible.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Appreciate the work that you guys have put into this. And yeah, congrats. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Caricato. Next up is Councillor Brockington, and Vice Chair Cluche, could I get you to take over for a couple of minutes, please?
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely. Councillor Brockington, please.
Thank you, Acting Chair. Certainly new revenue that's not from taxpayers or our riders is very good. So I'm very happy to see the possibilities here. And I note that we're generating about 2.2 million per year. The staff saying because they haven't entered negotiations yet, we don't know what the net increase will be to that annual amount. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Given that these negotiations hasn't started, I wouldn't want to prejudice the negotiations by making any estimates at this point.
So what if Pattison says, well, look, your ridership is at record lows. We're not going to have the target market in your stations, trains, and buses that you normally have. We're going to lowball you. What if you just think it's not good enough? Are we handcuffing you into signing an agreement, or what if, based on your professional experience, you just don't think it's a good enough deal for us?
So, Mr. Chair, exercising the extension in the contract would only be done if it's determined it's in the best interest of the city to do so. And so that would be as a result of a successful negotiation with the incumbent.
Okay. So do you have certain criteria already established?
So, Mr. Chair, as I had indicated, I think, I caution having this discussion just in this forum, given that we haven't entered into negotiations yet. I wouldn't want to prejudice those negotiations.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Councillor, maybe I can help. Your question is important, and I won't prejudice the discussions, but I can tell you that we have comparable data. So for example, I know the Calgary operation, they have LRT on rail. So the market rates pre-COVID were pretty much standard in urban cities,
Okay.
even except the downtown New York City and stuff. So, we have a lot of intel, and we've done market soundings in the past, again, all pre-COVID. So it's going to be, we're going to roll up the sleeves and try to get the best value. But if it's not a good value, we'll come back and say, hey, it's not worth doing that right now.
Yeah, all I'm saying is we're in the trough right now and we're about to go up. So why sign when we're right here when we can achieve a much better deal when we're up here? So
Will drives a hard bargain. Trust me, he and I will push hard.
I'm looking for, in addition to what we would normally think about advertising on the buses, on trains, just above, close to the ceiling, advertisements when you walk in, is there ability to have more animated advertising where, I don't know, can you print something on the back of a paper transfer? Can you have people in our stations representing companies handing out like gum or something? Like, what does advertising entail?
That all comes later on, and if you're chasing the big money in this space, it's called station domination. And you can see that if you go to Montreal, where an entire station is the color of the brand that you're pushing. So everywhere you go, you see that brand. That's where the big money is. The paper transfer stuff, everybody's going automated. It's not as big. The in-person stuff, you got to be careful with that. We got busker rules and so forth, but station domination is the big one. We have ruled out, and we will never support vehicle wraps because that causes a lot of damages to your vehicles, and you'll get into big cost recoveries with RTG and RTM on that. So the exterior of the vehicles we're staying away from, but your big play comes when we put all this together as part of the massive system that you'll have with a very captive audience.
Excellent. Okay, thanks very much and good luck.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up is Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you. I support this, and I appreciate the work that's been done on this. I remember going to London on the tube system and reading all the advertisements for the shows that are coming up. So it was fun. So I think that can be part of our tourism package as well, just talking about what's going on. Once we get back into that, of course, let's keep dreaming. We will get back there. I just have a question regarding what we accept for advertising. We have had issues in the past on our buses, and I want to make sure that we don't have that again. And I think you know what I'm talking about. I was very concerned. It's to do with gender equity because it was issues related to anti-choice, and it was very disturbing. So I just want to make sure that that's not going to happen again.
So I will go first, and then I will ask legal to comment. Counselor, I'm glad you raised this. I'm being my usual candid self. Careful what you wish for. You will get what you've had in the past, and staff cannot say no to certain advertising. So we've had the abortion issues. We've had a famous pop star that was deemed inappropriate, but we had to keep it on. We had 9/11, anti-9/11 conspiracy theories, which is very controversial. Some members were still on commission back then. This is what comes with advertising. And if Mr. O'Connor, I know he dealt with it when he was a city solicitor, but legal, the opinions are crystal clear on what we can and cannot say no to. And it puts staff in a horrible position. And we have a process for that. When we get complaints, we will notify council. There's been a complaint and there's nothing we can do about it. So it comes, it's come in the past. It's going to come with this. It's part of this business. And the Supreme Court rulings were very, very prescriptive of what we can say no to and what we say yes to. So I don't know if legal's on the phone or Rick, I'd hate to put you on the spot, but I know you know the file like the back of your hand. Counselor, I just wanted to be very open about that.
John, this is Taffy. Yes, OC Transport did a review back in 2015 on the advertising standards. And we're always kept in loop with not only the standards established by Advertising Standards Canada, but also the legal cases. And so we always are looking at that lens, just exactly what you spoke about earlier. So yes, that is correct.
It's very concerning. We'll have to play it by ear, but I appreciate your candidness, but of course we'll be watching. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And thank you, Mr. McDonald, for being with us today to answer questions as well. So, Commission, the recommendation is that the Transit Commission approve that the city enter into an agreement with Patterson Outdoor Advertising to expand the existing contract to include O-Trains Line 1 and stations, to extend the contract until the year of the Stage 2 O-Train extensions expected revenue service availability. Is that recommendation carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you. We have no in-camera items today. Are there any notices of motion? Okay, hearing none. Are there any inquiries? I believe Councillor Brockington, you had one?
No, that's been dealt with through the questioning, Chair. Thank you.
Been dealt with? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
and yes,
Mr. Chair, I have an inquiry.
Okay.
And Mr. Manconi, when you were presenting, you noted that there had been 71 cases of COVID out of a population, OC Transport employee population of 3,000. That translates into an incidence rate about 50% higher than the general population in the city. And I'm just hoping that you could consult with Ottawa Public Health to determine if that is just a statistical anomaly, if it is something that we should be concerned about, and if it is something that we should be concerned about, if there's something more that can be done.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Manconi, do you want to take that as an inquiry, or do you want to try to answer that today?
I'm glad to answer it right now if you give me that privilege.
So, yeah, let's do that, please.
Okay, great question, Commissioner. So we, every single report, we are joined with, we have a strategic partnership with Public Health where they analyze the incident, they do contact tracing and so forth. And absolutely to your point, they are looking at our trend line and they will tell us if there's a transmission issue or an issue in the workplace. There is none, there has been none. It's basically your question to a T in terms of we are tracking, we've been tracking it since day one of COVID. And Public Health is absolutely doing everything you said, is if there's an incident, making us aware of it and what do we do about it. So it's an anomaly. Okay,
thank you, Mr. Manconi. Does that satisfy your question, Commissioner Olson?
Yes, that is fine. Thank you, Chair.
Perfect. Okay. Seeing no other inquiries,
I
is there?
do,
any-
sorry, Chair. It's
Okay.
Councilor McKenna. Yeah, my mic was off when I yelled the first time, so I do have an
Okay.
inquiry. Thank you. Several of our transit bus operators have expressed concern in the past that they're being denied access to employee washrooms at LRT stations. According to some operators, RTG has told operators who drive buses that stop at Rideau, Parliament Line, and Pimsey stations.
You're breaking up, Councillor McKenna. You're breaking up.
To use employee washrooms. As
I
an
wonder,
agency that operating
Councillor,
shall be provided from.
Councillor
Yes.
McKenna, we're having a lot of trouble hearing what you were saying there. I wonder if you want to try it one more time with the
I'm
camera
sorry.
off and see if that comes through.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll start over then. Several of our transit bus operators have expressed concern in the past that they are being denied access to employee washrooms at LRT stations. According to some operators, RTG has told operators who drive buses that stop at Rideau, Parliament Line, and Pimsey stations that they are not entitled to use the employee washrooms. As an agency that operates in 2 provinces, OC Transpo is governed by the Canada Labour Code. And according to the Labour Code, if feasible, a toilet room shall be provided for employees. So my questions to staff are the following: is RTG permitted to deny access to washrooms on city-owned property to city employees? Does the city carry any liability for failing to meet the Canada Labour Code provisions regarding employee washroom access? How many complaints have been received about the lack of access to washrooms by bus operators? Are you aware of any staff resigning due to the lack of washrooms, and how many? And how many women operators have resigned as a result of RTG's refusal to allow employee washroom use?
Thank you, Councillor McKenney. That came through very clear this time. Mr. Manconi, again, I'll offer, do you want to try to address this now, or do you want to take it away?
Well, I'd rather have it come back in a formal response, if that's okay.
Okay. All right,
Thanks.
as you wish. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other inquiries? Okay, seeing none. Is there any other business? Okay, motion to adjourn. Vice Chair, can we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion that the Transit Commission meeting of St. Patrick's Day, Wednesday, March 17th be adjourned.
Thank you. I'm assuming that's carried. There'll be a media availability at 12:45 for those interested. And the next regular meeting will be on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. Okay, thank you all. And I hope you have a happy and safe St. Patrick's Day. Sorry. For some reason, I want to say Molly Maguire's. And I'm sure for those of you that are over 35, you'll know exactly what I meant by that and how my brain went there. Anyway, thank you all. Bye now.